OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, very good morning to you. It's Tuesday morning and it's 7:30 and we have a full house. Shane is here. Shane, morning to you.
Good morning, how are things?
Kathleen is here. Kathleen, how are you?
Good morning, I'm very good, thank you.
Everybody well after the weekend?
Yeah, really leaving cert weather, isn't it? Leaving cert's tomorrow, is it? It's usually
Wednesday? Yeah. For a second there I was like, no, tomorrow's Tuesday, and I was like, bank holiday, Kathleen.
Had my first ever iced coffee yesterday.
Oh!
Yeah, I know.
Moving up in the world.
I never had one. I was going in for a coffee in town and someone said, you should have an iced coffee. And I was like, Jesus, I've never thought of that. And it was great. A little bit of vanilla in it as well. So that was my weekend. A lot of fun.
Okay.
I went out on Saturday night and then I decided to be very, very mature on the bank holiday Sunday. So I woke up smug and rested yesterday in the sun. So that was nice for a change.
And where does out take you these days?
Out usually takes me to the pubs of Monaghan Town.
Oh, right.
The only nightclub in Monaghan Town. So,
still a nightclub man?
Like, my arm can be twisted easily enough. I wouldn't consider myself a nightclub man. I prefer a pub and a pint of stout by myself, but no, the odd time I can be convinced. Living out the last year of my 30s, Kathleen, 20s. I'm heading for my 30s. Yeah.
This is the big reveal of the weekend, is that Shane is actually 10 years older than he's been telling everyone.
100%. No, I've got till September.
And was the iced coffee in Monaghan?
It was in Monaghan, yeah. We do have iced coffee in Monaghan and Wi-Fi and things like that.
You were the one who
Yeah, you know, Monaghan's getting oceans now. Yeah, it's moving up in the world. It's only an hour and a half from Dublin. It's probably going to be a commuter belt town within the next 10-15 years. So,
will it?
Maybe not. Carrick Macross in South Monaghan has become one, so we're getting there. But yeah, that was my. I got a bit of sunburn in Clonus on Sunday afternoon as well, regardless of factor 50. So yeah, that didn't help.
And was Clonus exciting?
It was buzzing. 8,500 people, I think, over 8,000 anyway, so not far from full. The capacity is about 30,000 in Clonus, but a few Clare fans in attendance as well, and really attacking football. 123 to 118.
But Shane, football is dead. Have you not been following the narrative?
I know, yeah. It was amazing. There was so many scores from distance as well. Jack McCarron kicked 9 points, 8 from play. It was fun. It was an exciting match. Both teams just going for it. 10-all at the break, so I enjoyed that. Bit of fun. You had athletic endeavours at the we-end, Ger, didn't you?
I did tri-thigh.
Oh, you did tri-thigh? We did last year.
The only one who showed up again this year, it turns out.
Yeah.
So it was fine. It was all right. It turns out you should probably do a bit more training than I had done.
Did you improve on your training last year?
Well, my timing chip didn't work.
Okay, that doesn't help.
It didn't. It meant that
my timing chip didn't work, as in...
So I'll get my homework, it sounds like. No, it actually... It kicked in... It kicked in for the cycle, so it didn't record my time for the swim, which means that I'm officially last and took 6 hours and 40 minutes. I think I took closer to like an hour and 40 minutes maybe, or a bit less even. But there was a lot of walking going on in the 5K, and I'm still feeling it today.
It's funny, Kathleen, how like Ger's strongest leg in a triathlon would undoubtedly be the cycle, and that's when his chip started working. Isn't that funny?
That is shocking. Yeah. Well, I'm really interested in that one.
I was interested. Actually, my cycle was no faster than last year, which would suggest the 750 metre swim, which I did this year, as opposed to the 250 swim, which we all kind of meandered down. That's much harder. 750 metres swimming is harder. But the weather was sensational, and the Thai looked incredible. It was a really beautiful thing to do.
Are you a tourism ambassador for Thai yet?
I'd recommend everybody sign up for Tri-Thai next year, and it was great. The atmosphere was incredible, because last year it was a bit misty, the wind and the rain, and it was like not pleasant.
No.
It's funny how the weather changes everything, isn't it?
But I have to say, I thought last year when he did it looked brilliant as well, regardless of the mist and the rain. So yeah, I can imagine in the sunshine it would look even better.
Was it any harder doing it with it actually being warm and?
Was it harder? No, I don't think so. I think it helps, because it like, as I said, the atmosphere is like, there are more people out in the streets, more people kind of
cheering you on.
Which really makes a difference. I mean, I know it kind of sounds like it's stupid, it shouldn't make any difference. It's you versus, but actually it's much nicer to do this with people too. That's the other I did actually, we had a plan. We got my mates from home were supposed to do it, but they all pulled out slowly over the last couple of weeks. I'm like,
pathetic.
Yeah.
That is pathetic.
Did anyone else end up doing it with you, or were you the sole survivor?
From my mates from home, I was the only one. Yeah, the only one from here as well. I met a friend of mine from my old class. So hello to John Pingleton. Good morning to you. Anyway, we should get into the rest of the weekend because my athletic endeavours not particularly.
In the red.
You were,
There's FA Cup. You were doing the triathlon. I mean,
I actually missed all the good stuff on Saturday. I was listening to Football Saturday with JD and Graham Gartland as they were watching the game on the way back up, and then listening to a bit of Kildare and Dublin on KFM, and then I stopped. But anyway, 7:35 this morning. It is time for the Gillette Labs performance rankings.
That wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it acceptable to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Let's get straight into it, into the red this morning. And I think we're going to start with Manchester United, who were oh so close and yet oh so far on Saturday afternoon to Manchester City, and there is a gap between the teams. Regardless of the 2-1 result, I think it's fair to say there is a gulf. United trying to, of course, stop the treble. Next weekend, this inevitable treble that City are probably going to complete this weekend. It's not to say Interman won't show up and cause some destruction potentially, but I have to say, Ger, I'll hold my hands up a little bit here on Jadon Sancho. So I watched him closely when I was at Old Trafford recently against Wolves. I've watched him very closely in recent matches. I watched him closely on Saturday, and he's just, at the moment, not good enough. He's been really, really poor. You're just waiting for Garnacho to be sprung from the bench, and eventually they bring Garnacho on. They don't bring Sancho off just yet. Garnacho just lights the game up, and all of a sudden United looked, in the last 15-20 minutes, like they could maybe get an equaliser, take the game to extra time. There weren't clear-cut chances. Like at the end, McTominay's header bounces off the top of the crossbar, goes behind for a corner. But there's just so many areas of United's team that need improvement. Like Maguire will be gone this summer, you'd imagine. He's been left in the fringes.
Will he?
I can't see him coming back in.
Well, I can't. Okay.
Like Martinez wasn't even involved the weekend, and Maguire just doesn't have a sniff. You can see him in the photograph there trying to console.
Will he be gone though? I'm just not sure.
Well, unless he wants to be a bit part squad player and wear the armband when he comes on in the Carabao Cup.
They were saying they're going to have to give him 10 million in cash to leave to make up for the reduction in wages that whoever signs him will have to pay. So, I don't know. They're paying now for the sins of chronic mismanagement over the last 15 years, and it's going to be very interesting to see how quickly they can come out from under that, because clearly they've got a good manager who's able to make these players play at a certain level, but to get to the next level,
I think Erik ten Hag is a manager that can take it out to the next level. I think there are, although they're in the red this morning, like there are positives. If you'd said to United fans at the start of the season, you'll win a trophy, albeit the Carabao Cup, and you'll get top 4, I think they would have taken it. And then get into an FA Cup final.
You're
as well.
telling me it's a good season, Shane. Telling me it's a good season.
It's an improvement.
It's a better season than Arsenal's season.
No, I had said if they'd won the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup and finished top 4, it would have been a better season for me, in my opinion, than Arsenal season. As things materialised, I think.
What you said.
Listen, play the tape.
Everybody's happy after the bank holiday weekend. We're not going.
Yeah, exactly. David De Gea is a problem, I have to say. His distribution again on Saturday left much to be desired. It just doesn't fill you full of confidence. And then again, you got the Golden Glove this season in the Premier League, most clean sheets. So you look at that stats wise and you think, oh, all is well in the
but that is
Spanish
also
days.
like one element of a goalkeeper's game. Like most clean sheets doesn't actually talk about, well, how well did you, were you on the ball when you had it? How well did you like put it out to everyone else? You know, how much were you actually stopping in and around the box? I don't know how much winning a Golden Glove and those sort of individual awards actually tells how good a player is. It's the same with like most goals. You can be like, okay, yes, you're good at scoring, but you could also sit in the box and poach goals all day long, or you could be absolutely useless to the team the rest of the time, which is fine sometimes and probably better for a goal scorer than a goalkeeper, but I think
like Roy Keane has been on the record as saying I didn't care if I played with a striker who didn't run one little bit. If they scored 25-30 goals a season, I was happy with that. Is it the same for goalkeepers? If you get me X number of clean sheets per season,
but sure, the clean sheets aren't a function of just the goalkeeper, they're a function of the whole team's approach to defending. And like, with respect, Roy wasn't, it turns out, the best judge of players. Like, he was a world-class midfielder, but it turned out he wasn't a brilliant manager. Like, he's a goal scorer, he's a goal scorer, he's a goal scorer. It's like, well, I mean, come on.
That just could be man management skills, though. Maybe he can spot a player but can't, control the dressing room kind of thing. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where United go beyond De Gea. Like,
just sign a goalkeeper who knows what Ten Hag wants and can do stuff. Like, you would hope that they have better scouting than us who are casually watching a league and a half across Europe. Do you know, they should be able to find a goalkeeper who can do whatever Ten Hag needs.
Yeah, no, it's fair. There's going to be a lot of United fans this morning tuning in and going, why are they in the red?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm asking. So come on, give me the reasons why they're in the red. Because they had an okay season. They lost the cup final. The trouble here is that it's Man City that are doing it to them, right? Like, you actually it would be much worse if it was Liverpool about to win the treble. I understand that. But if Man City's lawyers manage somehow to make whatever the punishment is for the alleged breaches that they have been involved in, so small that they're not ever going to go away, which is possible, right? Or even if they go away for a season because of it, they're never really going to go away. And so Ten Hag has to be an absolute genius, and all of the signings need to work out.
Yeah.
Like, Anthony needs to take a step next year to being a goal scorer and a creator. Whoever comes in now to replace whoever leaves needs to be really good from the get-go. And are they going to have any money? So like that's the one thing that would have me thinking, there's no guarantee that next season offers significant progress from this season.
I think the green things are Anthony has improved. Ten Hag is clearly a very good manager. If Kane and Mount come in, that improves the team. Martinez was missing at the weekend and Anthony was missing at the weekend. Weghorst will be gone, Maguire will be gone, there'll be some deadwood gone next season. The red things are the ownership situation is a mess. It's dragging on far too long, and that's probably leaving the transfers a little bit up in the air. And there is also really, but like, you also did lose the FA Cup final. Like, they did lose, and they were so off the pace of City. Like, watching that game, there was maybe like once or twice where United actually looked like they were going to score from that. I think they had 3 shots on target across the entire game. City dominated in possession. They looked comfortable. They looked like they could just like go up another gear. And like, yeah, obviously there is all the money thing which should be talked about and has to be talked about, but like, also a Manchester United fan sitting back and saying, this is a good place for us to be right now, is not the sort of Manchester United that we're used to. And for me, at the end of the season, I think that's a very good reason for them to be in the red, including all the stuff you just mentioned. And the fact that like across the club, it's also just not the men's team as well. Like, it's the women's team where they had a very productive season, but now we don't know how they're going to be able to build on it whatsoever. Like, the official supporters group at the weekend was writing to the club and saying, well, here, we keep talking about like how the men's side are going to benefit from this supposed ownership takeover, but nowhere has it actually said that, they're going to improve where the team are playing, they're going to improve facilities, they're going to give money for transfers coming in. Like, United are likely going to lose one of their best players in Alessia Russo this summer, and they also can't plan to how they're going to replace her because everything is up in the air. And there are the green shoots, and maybe you're right, Ger, in what you say, in that you need every signing to work out, but you could also look at it in the sense of Arsenal and what Arteta has done and taking those few years and building, but there needs to be that support there, and because that support is unknown at the moment, we have no idea how United are going to do next season. It's a bit up in the air, isn't it?
What do you want for the ownership?
Like Jim Ratcliffe. I was speaking to a mate of mine who's a United fan the weekend, and he was like, he couldn't believe I was saying Jim Ratcliffe. He was like, do you not want the money in from Qatar? I was like, no. Like, I've given out enough about Newcastle and the Saudis. I can't exactly be a hypocrite and say I'd love the Qatari money.
Football fan Shane, I think you'll find that the hypocrisy goes hand in hand.
And look, not that any of these rich people's, look, it's all a bit dirty in a sense, but I mean, lesser two evils to a degree. Like, I think a lot of United fans are split on that. It's 50-50. But we'll see the next couple of months. I think they probably would have been in amber maybe overall for me, United, but I can see the argument for them being in red this morning.
Okay, so who else is in red?
Yeah, we're going to put Meath in the red as well, the Meath ladies specifically, because Davy Nelson stepping aside at the weekend, and the statement, by the way, was just a little bit strange. So the Meath senior ladies team in the middle of the championship, or the middle of the year essentially, on the lookout for a new management team. So the county board confirming Nelson and his assistants will not be in charge at the start of the All-Ireland series that begins later this month. They're going to play Waterford. So they finished second from bottom in Division 1 of the league this year, Meath, and then lost to Dublin in the Leinster final last weekend. Granted, the performances haven't been great, and certainly compared to the Meath performances of the last couple of years,
you've one win in like 7 games or something.
Yeah, it's not good, but I mean, you should surely see out the summer and see how the summer goes. Teams, it's happened before, teams come good. Kerry in 2009 were famously, in the men's side of things, poor, and then we all know what happened. They went on and win the All-Ireland, and they're only 3 weeks out from that game against Waterford. No management now. There's talk that Eamon Murray, who of course Stevie Nelson, his management team replaced, is potentially considering coming back out of retirement and entering the setup. That was in the Meath Chronicle certainly over the weekend as one option.
I wonder, are they trying to manifest that though at this stage, like as a solution? Because if they don't get him back, then you've got a temporary management team in place 2 weeks out from the start of the championship with a side who, shorn of some superstar talent, but like back-to-back defending champions. That's a big deal, you know?
Yeah. The writing was on the wall probably when they were involved in that relegation playoff against Donegal in the league, and you're thinking, Meath should be pushing for a Division 1 title here. They shouldn't be trying to stay up.
But if that was the case, it just seems so late on to be doing it. Like a 100%. Couple of weeks out from the championship. He was only in for 8 months, was it? Started in October last year. And the fact that it's the entire team, so you're not even leaving someone there to kind of take up the baton and kind of fill the gap while you try and get someone else in. Because that statement wasn't particularly clear in the fact of it. Was it the Meath board that was saying we don't want you anymore? Was it players? Was it they
had enough? Did they walk away? It's definitely there's some reporting still to be done on this situation. But
as they said, with regret, Meath LGFA announced that the county senior management will not be taking the team forward. So yeah, the phrase is a bit strange. Head coach Mark Brennan gone as well. You just wonder. Now the reporting on Eamon Murray from the Meath Chronicle was that he could be convinced to come out of retirement. Right. So it's certainly quite vague.
It's like they're reporting about Brendan Rodgers this morning across all of it. He could be convinced.
Yes, you wonder. But I think for that reason and that reason alone, as Kathleen says, in the middle of the year when the championship is just around the corner, that's probably why Meath deserve to be in the red. So it's worrying.
It was Fergal Lynch, the sports editor of the Meath Chronicle, who was reporting that Eamon Murray could be convinced. So yeah, that is the story with that one. We'll get to Brendan Rodgers in a minute because
we're moving on to the Amber.
Yeah,
and Celtic, I think.
Oh look, we're right there right now.
Straight away, what a segue. Celtic, of course, in the Amber because from a green perspective, I guess, sealing a record-breaking 8th domestic treble. That 3-1 win over Inverness Cally Thistle over the weekend as well, and a 5th treble in 7 years, which just isn't bad. And Postecoglou winning, was it? All but one of the available trophies to him in his time in charge at Celtic. And from the moment Kyogo Furuhashi scores that opening goal, you're thinking, okay, this is game over. Inverness made it a little bit interesting, pulling one back at 2-1. But certainly, from a Celtic perspective, great weekend, except for the fact that, of course, Ange Postecoglou, the man the fans love, the man who's been involved in so much good recruitment, the man that has brought an attacking style of play to Celtic Park that fans have just fallen in love with, is out the gap. Certainly he was very vague in his post-match press conference after the match of the weekend, saying, I just want to enjoy this for the next 48 hours until someone grabs me by the collar and says, we got to talk about your future. Because he's going on a family holiday, I think, today, Ange Postecoglou. So you'd imagine the discussions will have been quite intense yesterday with Tottenham. But it seems, according to reports this morning, that it's all but over the line. We just need to see Ange essentially holding a Tottenham Hotspur jersey, and that's the last little step. 2-year contract seems to be the discussion coming out of North London. It's a great deal for Spurs. I said last week in the show I felt Ange should probably stay and avoid the potential mess that is Mr. Levy's Tottenham. But I can see why he took the job at the same time.
Yeah, well, he wants to be in the Premier League, and realistically at the moment it's probably the best job out there. I mean, I'm curious as to how this one is supposedly supposed to work, if he's the sort of manager who doesn't like that much over people overseeing him all that much, because you look at the way Spurs have conducted themselves over the last couple of years and the involvement of Daniel Levy, that doesn't sound like the sort of club that Ange will.
I'm not sure about that. I think that Levy tends to do the business of the football club in terms of length of contracts and transfers, but he's not down saying that I don't like your 3 attacking players, or we can't sign these players. Like, it did look like the Paratici, when he was there, had free rein to sign within the budget. So that's kind of how it works. Like, everybody has a boss somewhere. Like, even Levy has a boss, you know.
Yeah, and you can understand things completely from Ange Postecoglou's perspective. The question from Celtic's point of view is, who the hell do they go to next?
Brendan Rodgers.
Is he the obvious one?
Well, no, not at all. But Rodgers has been linked with it here, on the back of the Mirror, or the back of the Star today, and other places.
One of my mates from home, who's a big Celtic fan, I asked him at the weekend, who do you want? And he said straight away, without hesitation, Brendan Rodgers. David Moyes is another name that's been linked. Graham Potter is available. Frank Lampard's available.
No, these are not the same things.
No, Celtic fans will probably want continuity as well. Like, John Kennedy is obviously highly thought of, but Ange will more than likely want him at Spurs as well.
Was he not there beforehand? Did he not? Was he? So I don't know. Did Kennedy join Celtic with Ange, or was he predate? I think he predates him, doesn't he?
He possibly predates him, but certainly he's been under that management team. Harry Kewell has been one of the senior coaches as well.
So he brought him with him. So Graham Barton was on Saturday saying that basically, apart from Kewell, everybody was there already. Strachan's son, and it sounded like Kennedy, and so basically he can work with anybody.
Essentially, he seems like a man who can get on with anyone. Now, which of those names is most likely? If you're to believe the bookies, it's Brendan Rodgers.
Rodgers wants to take a year out of football, was what they're saying in the piece in the Star today. But who knows?
Yeah, and then look, Kyogo Furuhashi as well. Like, the rumours are that, of course, Ange wants to bring him with him, and Kyogo, I'm sure, would not turn down a move to the Premier League if it came about with a manager who already likes him. So from a Celtic perspective, it was a good weekend in that they saw the silverware, but yeah, worrying times until they find a successor that I guess all the fan base gets behind. So Celtic.
Yeah, Kennedy has been at Celtic since 2010 under some capacity. Which actually, it could be an interesting, I mean, he's been a caretaker manager before, but could be interesting to have someone who's been, like, spent so long with the team and also with so many different various parts with it. Like, he's worked with the under-19s, he was a scout, he worked with the development squad, and he then became first team coach in 2014. So
Jesse Marsh, another name that's been linked, and Enzo Maresca as well, the former Italian midfielder.
You'd hope that they do the same thing they did the last time, and that they're using their scouting department to find the next Ange. Like, that seems to have worked pretty well.
Yeah, as he said himself, he was a joke. He was a joke when he came in, or a joke figure. No one knew who he was. Who's this guy from the Japanese J League and the Australian A League? But clearly, the scouting works in terms of managers as well. So it remains to be seen over the next coming days who Celtic opt for. Also in the Amber, we're going to go with this morning in Gaelic Games, and I know we have Anthony Moyles coming up on the show later on. But we're going to touch on the All-Ireland contenders, I guess. Would you call it a race to the bottom, maybe, in the Sam Maguire this year? Because none of them really want to power ahead and show it. Galway are the only unbeaten team in the championship this year of those contenders that you would say. So for me, Galway are top of the pile.
They only have won every game.
The which?
The only
team that won every game. So from that perspective, you probably have Galway top of the pile. Like Kerry.
Sorry, the reason that they're all in amber is that their injuries are beginning to mount up.
Yeah.
So we
Galway
saw
are part of that.
Galway, Finnerty and Walsh. We saw Kerry have had some injury issues. The Dubs don't look the same team when they don't have McCaffrey. Like, now, in fairness, in the second half they were pretty impressive against Kildare. And other than that, who else have we got?
Mayo. Like I did say,
not playing, Killian O'Connor still not back.
Well, this is it. But like I said in the quick picks of the weekend, or before the weekend, I said the Mayo Louth game will be much closer than people realise. But that like, a lot of that is down to Castlebar. I just thought Mickey Hart would be up for it. and the style of play maybe doesn't suit Mayo. They seem to struggle playing against certain styles of play, this Mayo team, and I know it was a late Louth goal to get them back into the game, and they pushed up on Conor Grimes.
They were never that far off them either. Like, there was 2 points in it for most of the game, and like Louth were kind of keeping fairly toe to toe with them. And like, no one expected that at all. Like, I was chatting to Colin Boyle before it started, and he was like, this is going to be an absolute whitewash, which may as well have been a bit of the Mayo fog coming over him. But, you know, Nathan was making the point on Sunday that with Mayo, they don't often, whenever they have to come up against a top team like a Kerry, they can put in the performance, but when someone has to bring them down to their level, they don't adjust as well. And like, the way that Louth defend, just totally, it looked like Mayo didn't know what to do, and it was a completely opposite performance to what they had against Kerry.
You'd be concerned if you were a Mayo fan a little bit from the performance of the weekend, but then again, they got over the line, they got the win, move on.
But you also wonder as well how much Mayo fans actually really cared about it. Like, I think there was less than 10,000 people in Castlebar, and like, it's
a lot of nice beaches in Mayo, you know, a lot of other things to do on of a Sunday.
Yeah, it's true. And then you look at teams. There are could this be a year where maybe a team comes in under the radar and wins in All Ireland, like
Tyrone?
Well, Tyrone and Roscommon and Monaghan are going about their business very quietly, little whispers. I'm not saying either of those 3 teams are necessarily going to win in All Ireland, but
well, I think Tyrone have a chance. You know, they certainly know how to do it as a squad and as a management team. But you would say that any of those 3 teams in that tier all have the opportunity to knock off one of the top seeds.
Yeah,
like on All Ireland quarter-final weekend, all 3 of those teams are going to believe that they have a very good chance of beating whoever it is that they come up against, and particularly if you're Roscommon, who are probably going through the front door this stage, are they?
Yeah, based on the scoring difference after the Sligo game, although Dublin had a 9-point win over Kildare as well. So
sorry, actually, there, yeah.
Well, that'll go down to the last game regardless.
Yeah, it'll go down. There's a point and a difference between the 2 at the moment.
Yeah, so
you expect those to rack up a big score in the last one, so
possibly.
Yeah,
and the same in the Monaghan Derry group. They're level on head-to-head and points, and I think it's points scored. The Monaghan have a slight advantage, but yeah, that'll go down to the last game.
That bye week is going to be really important to get players back. That's like it's going to end up. It could end up being quite a serious thing to finish first versus second, because if you have an extra week and all of a sudden a player who's not available is available, that's the difference between winning the quarter-final and buying a bit of time for yourself.
And also the difference in finish second and third is humongous in getting that home advantage. Like, you'd imagine 3 or 4 of those matches will go towards the home team. I'd be shocked if any more than 1 or 2 of those away teams won those preliminary round robin games. So that remains to be seen. So then, yeah, the weekend after next is huge in the football side of things.
Okay.
Moving on to the green, and first up in the green is Tom McKibben. What a performance from him at the weekend. 20 years of age, Tom McKibben as well, but you wouldn't know it to watch him at the weekend. Held his nerve in Hamburg, claiming his first DP World Tour title win, 2-stroke victory at the Porsche European Open, and you have to remember as well that the 2 players that were kind of chasing him and hounding him for the duration of the final round, Max Kiefer and Marcel Siem, both German, both home favourites, and both desperately under pressure from the home fans to get over the line. A 15-year wait as well for a German winner on home soil. And the 3 of them share the lead at one stage in the back 9, but it was McKibben makes the turn on 3 under par, drops shots in the 11th and 13th holes, and you're thinking, right, 20 years of age, that might affect him a little bit, but then birdie on the 15th, moves clear on the 8 under. Earned his card for 2023 as well on the European Challenge Tour, graduated from that. He's of course a Hollywood Golf Club member as well, similar to one Rory McIlroy, and I mean, he's just impressive. And even listen to his interview afterwards, talking about approaching the final days the same as the first 3 days, and that sounds like such a simple thing to say, but at 20 years of age to have the wherewithal on the back 9 to do what he did. And he talked about on 18, he said, my hands were all right, I hit 5-iron, I picked a club I knew wouldn't go in the water, right edge of the green, and if it turned over I knew it would go further, so I had no worries, but it was such a good shot, it felt pretty amazing. Talking about he felt he always was good enough to win, but you can feel that, but you have to actually get over the line, and Tom McKibben now has got over the line.
I thought he was so impressive in his post-match or his post-game interview, like just the way he was talking about the methodical way he thought through every single shot, and where someone else, he was like, I know from the outside people are probably looking at that shot and thinking it was extremely difficult or I should have tried something easier, but he was like, I knew I had it in me, and I knew that was the best shot for me in that moment, so I went for it. And like, he wasn't even saying it in a like I'm great sort of way, it was just a innate confidence in himself and where he's at. And like, to hear a 20-year-old 20-year-old speaking like that as well was absolutely mad.
And even his he spoke afterwards about missing cuts by a single shot and very near misses in other tournaments as well, and how much he's learned from those things. And at 20 years of age, if you're not learning from your failures, you're not going to go too far.
It's incredibly exciting. And the fact that he also comes from Hollywood, and all those comparisons with McIlroy are going to be very difficult for him to shake off, but hopefully he wins more majors.
Exactly.
But also they seem to have been leaning into it as well over the last couple of years. Like, McIlroy has been very much helping him along. He's been getting invited to various different events, and he has already had that tagline for long enough that it seems that if he's starting to actually compete now, it's something he's adjusted to rather than something he has to start adjusting to.
Yeah, I think though it'll be way more prominent. Like it's in all the papers, and hopefully he just enjoys it.
Yeah, and sorry, someone said in the comments as well that he should be higher in the green.
Greener than Money City.
Greener than Money City, but look, that's not really how we do it, is it? Like, if you're in the green, you're in the green.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the shades of green, ignore them.
They don't matter.
Yeah, Tom McKibben, he's as green as can be. McKibben in the green, and also in the green this morning, we've already touched on them, but Manchester City.
But who's he going to play for in the Olympics? That's the big question this morning. We haven't answered why we're not. Why?
That'll show us how green he is.
Woke Talk needs to answer this.
Yeah. All the questions.
Why are you ignoring the big questions?
Here we go. Also in the green, deservedly, Manchester City. I like superlatives, I'm not really going to use them, but John Stones was brilliant at the weekend. Jack Grealish, his interview afterwards, filling Stones full of praise. After the 12 seconds, I think most people are sitting there in shock going, what's just happened? And Gundogan's strike was brilliant. The second goal, I probably could question David De Gea's positioning and certainly United's marking on the edge of the box, but you can't take away from the City result and performance, and they got over the line, and they've only one leg left of this treble, this precedented treble, I should say. Pep Guardiola in tears as well, but there's just so much positivity from Manchester City perspective as well, notwithstanding all the financial irregularities to be investigated. And
do you know what I thought was really interesting? Across the papers at the weekend, they were talking about City winning the FA Cup, but no one was actually talking about the fact that City won the FA Cup. It was almost like there was nothing on the line on Saturday apart from United stopping City and City then going into the Champions League with the perspective of the treble on the line. And also, like, I don't think I read one article that mentioned the financial irregularities, and I was like, have we already got to the stage where City are winning these things? And it just... It doesn't matter. It doesn't factor in. It's not even like a line at the end of a article saying like, and of course City is still under investigation. Yeah,
it's a strange one, isn't it? The financial irregularities have to be mentioned. There has to be an asterisk put over until we know the results of this. And yet, look, City fans are going to sit there going, well, look, performances on the pitch still brilliant, and they are. And Pep Guardiola, well, he's already said, hasn't he, that he's going to stay on for another year after this season, because kind of some people are thinking, he might walk into the sunset and dance his merry way to another year's break. But from a City perspective, De Bruyne brilliant as well, albeit well marshalled by Fred for some portions of the game. Fred had only an okay match, but he certainly proved at Old Trafford earlier this season he can track De Bruyne.
Probably one of the most impressive performances over the weekend.
Yeah,
I know he wasn't able to keep on De Bruyne for the whole match. I think like after about an hour he kind of started to drift off him a bit. But
and Haaland wasn't he wasn't the imperious.
He was pretty quiet.
He was quiet enough.
Grealish as well was quiet enough in parts.
He was. There was little moments and flashes of brilliance, as you're always going to get from Grealish, and I think Haaland's main moment was when he takes the ball into the corner towards the end of the match and gives a little fist bump, as Haaland tends to do when he wins a corner or throw in. But City, going into the Champions League final next weekend against Inter with history beckoning,
all guns blazing. Right, that's this week's episode of the Gillette Labs Performance Rankings.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
Off the balls cash machine.
Right, so May was an absolutely huge month for the cash machine. 15 lucky winners and some winning life-changing amounts of cash. Mick in Wexford won 75 grand. Frank in Dublin won 50 grand. Liz also in Wexford won an incredible 81,000 euros. The winning showing no signs of slowing down. This week somebody could win a cool 60 grand heading into summer. It's easy to take part. We're about to give you an amount. You take note of it, you enter, and if we call you and you know the number, you win the cash. This week on the cash machine, we're giving away, it's a very easy number to remember, 60,000 euro exactly, 60,000 euro. To enter, text OTB and only OTB to 57557. If we call you back after 3 o'clock on Friday, June 9th, so that's this Friday, you answer your phone within 5 rings, tell us the prize amount, and you win the money. Text OTB to 57557. That's OTB to 57557. Cost is $2.50 plus your standard message rate to play. You have to be over 18. We're playing across the Go Loud network of stations, and full terms are on our website at offtheball.com. Get your entry in by 3 o'clock on Friday, June the 9th, and we could be calling you. Answer within 5 rings, tell us the exact amount, and the prize is yours. So 60,000 on the nose is the exact number that you need to know. Up next, Martin Lipton first. Here's Shane Curran talking about GAA structures suiting certain teams.
Off the Ball's Cash Machine.
Sligo didn't seem to be able to get to grips with it, but they got a couple of scores to close off the half, and they had I think 10 wides in the first half that Sligo will be disappointed with. But it follows the template of a lot of the games I think in the All-Ireland series now, where there's a bit of touchy-feely certainly for 20 minutes, and even the lower division teams can put it up for a period of time, but then I think the superior class comes out certainly with 20-25 minutes to go, and that was the case this afternoon.
Yeah, do you think that is the only issue with this new system, is that there are games that there is a big gulf in class, really?
Yeah, but I think, if we want the other teams to get up to the level of, the better sides, they have to be kind of exposed, I think, to that type of competition. And I think it's great. I think that the All-Ireland series is terrific in many ways. Some of the games are a bit benign, and some of the games are there's not really a lot at stake. We know the results probably, if not the outcome and the level of the score against the opposing team. But I think, there's many things we criticise the GAA for. This is one thing I think they've got right, and we've been crying out for years anyhow that we want more games, and the players want more games, and I think even nowadays, when you have your championship, you have your league, you have your championship, you now have the All-Ireland series, and there's a feeling, I think, that guys and clubs and counties are improving.
OTB AM,
the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
The last battle in the Ronaldo-Messi war was that World Cup. Yeah. And Ronaldo lost it, and then he ended up at Al Nassr.
It's pretty grim. The last time I saw him, as opposed to on Twitter scoring a goal in Saudi Arabia, was walking down the tunnel in tears after Portugal.
That's it, in terms of relevance at the elite level, that's it.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, it's 7 minutes past 8, and we're turning our attention to the big story in English football at the moment, which is whether or not Postecoglou is going to be formally announced today, or is it going to be another 24 hours. Martin Lipton is with us. Martin, it looks like this is a done deal for Spurs, is it?
Well, it seems that way, yeah. I mean, there's lots of negotiations. The deal appears to be done between Tottenham and Postecoglou. Suggestions last night that Celtic have signed it off as well. So the last issue, I guess, is over which members of his coaching backroom team he can take with him. But it looks like there's going to be an announcement either today or tomorrow. But what is apparent and evident is that Postecoglou is the new manager of Spurs. Hurrah, only 72 days, wonderful.
Yeah, if they'd signed him immediately and waited until the end of the season for it to all go through, it would have looked like they knew what they were doing. However, notwithstanding that, right, there is a possibility they've got a really, really good manager here.
Look, I think he's proven in Australia, in Japan, and now in Scotland that he knows what it takes to win. He's done a very good job. Winning titles in all those countries. Did a good job with Australia, and Spurs need a reset. That's absolutely certain. They've had drift and dither for far too long. It needs a project manager in the mould of Pochettino. The issue, of course, is we'll find out whether Postecoglou is in that mould. But when I talk to the Scottish reporters who cover Celtic regularly, they're very effusive about him and complimentary, and say that he's really made a massive difference. And Tottenham needs someone who can make a massive difference.
I think generally speaking, Martin, the reaction from Spurs fans has been a positive one to this news, but are there any reservations? I guess the lack of experience for Ange or success in European football maybe is one thing. I know Spurs won't be in European club football next season, but is that one concern maybe?
I think it's fear of the unknown more than anything else. I mean, some of them wanted a big name, even though big names clearly haven't worked particularly well for the last 2 or 3 seasons. Others, think that the person that they themselves want should get the job come what may. It's not like that. Look, it's pretty clear that Arne Slot was the first real first choice, as it were. Once they settled on a target, he looked like he was going to come, and that didn't happen. So now it looks as though, for some people, they're getting somebody down the list, but they weren't that keen on Pochettino originally. In fact, they wanted Van Gaal at the club, and it was only when he turned them down that they ended up with Pochettino, who, without question, was the best Tottenham manager of the entire Premier League era, which is now 30 years.
The style of play that Ange Postecoglou adapts as well, that'll be really fascinating. Presumably he just carbon copies one to the other, but it would suit a lot of these Spurs players, and the talk of Kyogo Furuhashi potentially joining Ange at Spurs as well is an exciting one.
Well, to use the phrase of a poet who wasn't particularly complimentary of Ireland, but the same answer did gain a power, must it maintain? This is how he got the job, by playing in a certain way. It would be foolish for him to go, try to reverse course if that's what he's good at. And also, there is not a single Tottenham fan who would not welcome and embrace a team that actually tries to score in the first 20 minutes. That'd be quite a novel concept. There was front foot football is really important, I think, to Tottenham fans. We haven't seen it. They haven't seen it for too long. Now, Postecoglou will bring front foot football. It may not necessarily be immediately successful. Remember, there was talk of Pochettino being ditched after 5 weeks because he lost a couple of games. Nothing is that easy. But I do think that by embracing an attacking philosophy, by trying to get players to play in the right direction rather than backwards and sideways, it won't be long before the fans really take to that.
Obviously, people have been thinking about what Harry Kane would look like in this scenario, and if they play 3 up front, that could be brilliant for him. If he is intent on breaking those records, and because the conversation has switched from Bayern Munich want him, he's not that interested. Manchester United want him, that could be difficult to get the deal done with Levy. Real Madrid want him, harder to turn down. But now it's also, he's only got a year left. Sit out for the year and take the money yourself.
Well, that's what I think will happen. And he may then sign a new deal and stay at Spurs. Let's find out. Or he may decide to go. There isn't a single Tottenham fan who would begrudge Harry Kane's decision, whatever that decision is. Let's put it in those terms straight away. The question of will Harry Kane flourish in a Postecoglou system? Harry Kane will flourish in any system because he's that good. He just scores goals. He scored 30 goals this season in the worst Spurs team of the last 10 years. That's how good he is. They were terrible, and yet in any other season he'd have been top scorer in the entire Premier League. This was a freak season where Haaland would score 36, but Kane's performances, well, I would argue, outshone those of Haaland because he was playing with a load of rubbish, and that's why he is thinking of considering his future, because he's given an entire career to Tottenham, and far too often Tottenham have let him down.
I think that it could be the perfect time then for Postecoglou in a way to come in, still have Harry Kane, still have Heung-min Son, be able to play Richarlison. Maybe they sign somebody else and the attacking trio isn't just the obvious attacking trio who are at the club at the moment. But it is possible that they all have great seasons playing front foot football in front of a stadium that is on fire because, as you say, they've been starved of this for so long, and that actually that's the type of thing that inspires Kane to stay and spend the rest of it. So I guess what I'm saying is the full range of outcomes, as you've outlined, are now back on the table when it felt like actually this relationship was naturally coming to an end.
Yeah, I mean, look, I might be entirely wrong here, and he could tomorrow say, actually, I want to leave and go and play for Rochdale, but I think in his heart of hearts, Harry Kane would love to spend his entire career at Tottenham as long as he could win some trophies. He wants to win a trophy. He wants to be the all-time Premier League top scorer, as he's already the all-time England top scorer. He would love to win a trophy with England as well. There's few opportunities to do that, as we know, although there's one coming up next summer in the Euros, assuming they qualify. If he could, he would stay. But 2 years ago, when City came calling. It was. I always said it wasn't so much that he wanted to leave, as that he felt he couldn't stay. And City messed it around and messed up a pretty easy transfer when it was simple that put the money on the table, you get the player. They didn't do that. They tried to play silly games with Daniel Levy, who decided, right, that's it, I'm not going to sell. He had more cards in his hand then, obviously, with 3 years left on the contract. I think that Levy knows if he sold Kane now, unless it is Real Madrid, because no one says, no one would blame Levy if he sold to Real Madrid. He would get inordinate stick if he sold to another Premier League club, which I think rules that out. So it is a dilemma for Tottenham, but also at the same time, they've got the best English striker potentially of all time. I'm not saying he is, because that's a matter of conjecture and opinion, but I would argue he's certainly in the conversation of the greatest English strikers of all time. Why not keep him?
You mentioned there, and we've spoken before, Martin, about Kane's desire to beat Alan Shearer's Premier League goal scoring record. But as you say, if a team like Real Madrid comes in, it is tough to turn them down, and the talk of Karim Benzema potentially leaving the Bernabeu only adds fuel to that fire. So is Real Madrid a realistic option, given the desire to hit that Shearer goal scoring record? Well,
theoretically, if you put it this way, how about this? You go to Real Madrid, you sign a 3-year deal, but after 2 you come back to Tottenham and you score your 40 goals over the next 4 seasons in your mid to late 30s. That's a viable option, potentially. You get your chance to win trophies with Real Madrid, because you're going to be in the top 2, aren't you? I mean, you're always going to be competing for the league title and the Champions League with Real Madrid. So that might be a situation. I'm not saying that is going to happen, by the way. I'm just floating a hypothesis there. But he is desperate to beat Shearer's record. There's no doubt about that. And I do think, given the reality that players tend to move around more now than they did then, if he does beat Shearer's record, that record may last forever.
Are trophies at Tottenham the ambition next season, Martin, or what's the ambition? Because it's 8th place finish this season, missing out in European football. Like, what's the number one thing? Is it to get top 4, or is it to win trophies?
Look, at Christmas, Spurs looked favourites for the top 4. They should have been a top 4 side this season. The implosion was due to a number of factors, starting with the manager deciding to blow up the entire squad because he basically wanted to go home to Italy. So, with the goals in the attacking lineup, they could be okay. But look at the rivals: Arsenal, City, United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Newcastle. It isn't actually that easy anymore. The ambition will be top 4. Only playing 1 game a week possibly makes that easier. And the demands of Champions League, for example, will really tell, I think, on Arsenal, because they need a bigger squad, and they struggled with the squad they had this season, trying to play Premier League and Europa League where you can play the reserves. Well, if they're stretching that with Champions League football as well, and that intensity, that's going to have an impact on them. So they need significant strengthening. What we're going to see with Chelsea, nobody really knows. But the ambition's got to be top 4. Yeah, whether they make it's another matter. I think aiming for top 4 and falling just short of playing good football would be a significant move forward from what we've seen this year.
Can I ask you about a few of the potential successors for Postecoglou? At one stage, Celtic actually wanted Eddie Howe and were waiting a significant period of time to get him to come, and then they end up with Postecoglou. Brendan Rodgers has said he wants to take a year out in the style of Eddie Howe, taking some significant time away from a relegated side. Has proven to be a good idea for Howe in terms of his perception, and also giving him the opportunity to refresh. Rodgers is being linked with Celtic. It seems a little bit maybe as a knee-jerk to what's gone on. Where is Brendan Rodgers at the moment when it comes to potential big jobs in English or European football, in your view, Martin?
I think it's difficult for him to go into a really big job unless he goes to Celtic, but that's a step back, and never go back is often a phrase used in football. You're judged by your achievements first time round. And whilst Brendan was undoubtedly successful at Celtic, you have to remember that this was in the time when Rangers were coming back from their enforced demotion to the the pits of despair in League 3, and they weren't the same force they are now. I think Brendan would probably benefit with waiting until Christmas and then see what's available, because I think something will be available in the Premier League, which I think is his preferred place to work. Would he be offered a job in Europe? I'm not so sure. Not in a major league, probably. So I think his smartest play is to just give himself a few months, rest, recuperate, recover his energy, and wait for the door to knock and the phone to ring.
Has his reputation been damaged by the Leicester situation?
I don't think so, actually. I mean, look at the Leicester situation from his perspective is, I won the FA Cup with Leicester City. And yes, we were relegated, but I wasn't in charge when we were relegated. I still think we could have got out of it. Other factors hasten that. You know, the impact of the pandemic on the owners of the club, who run a duty-free business, or are the duty-free operators in Thailand, was significant, more than significant. It hampered Leicester City. So they were, I think you could say, they're the last victims of COVID almost.
David Moyes is one of the other names that, I don't know if this is, again, wishful thinking. Is David Moyes going to be out of a job if West Ham win this competition? Because it sounds like he's talking about planning for next season. I just can't read that situation very well. I
think that his admission the other week that, and I know you might think the statement of the bleeding obvious, but his admission that Declan Rice was unlikely to be at West Ham last season would not have gone down well with the owners. Because I think they would argue that by saying that, he actually reduced the asking price. Right. Because he's really made it. And I think that might be used. I hope not. And I think it was very hard to get rid of him if they win tomorrow night. But if they were to lose to Fiorentina, which I think is not an unreasonable suggestion that they might lose to Fiorentina, although it's one of those games that could go either way, I think he may well be a casualty of war.
And, would Celtic be a job that interests him at this stage of his career?
It's so long since he was up in Scotland that you could see him doing that if he wanted to. And he is a proud Scot. You talk to David, and the longer you talk to him, the stronger the Scottish accent gets, I think. So, I mean, a part of that would be something that would definitely appeal. He's got a history with the club, and you can see a justification for him making that move if there's nothing else available. But will Celtic pay the sort of money that even a mid-sized Premier League club would pay? I'm not so sure.
Bear with me, Martin, as I throw this one at you, because a couple of names that were linked with Tottenham at the weekend, albeit very transfer rumour linked. James Maddison and Harry Maguire. Will there be any interest in North London for one or both?
I think they certainly look to explore them. I think Maddison's a great player, and Tottenham desperately need a 10. That's what was, ever since Eriksen left, they haven't had a number 10. Lo Celso didn't do it, and Ndombele didn't do it. Now they're both back now, but not for very long, I don't think, after their loan spells. So yeah, that would be an option. As for Maguire, well, I wouldn't have a problem with Maguire. Got to be honest, he's a very, very solid player. He's not had a great time at Manchester United, but he's still key cornerstone of England. You know exactly what you're going to get from him. And if he's a sort of a change of manager, a change of environment, a change of everything around him, may be really good and make him go back to be the player he was at Leicester. He will never be the quickest player on the pitch, but he knows his position, and there's a different level of expectation at Tottenham to United. Spurs fans would really embrace a centre-half with his physicality and his determination to win the ball. I mean, I think that's what's been lacking, actually. The one they've got who does that is Romero, but sometimes I wonder if there's anything between his ears, because he doesn't think about where he's making silly tackles. Now, every defender does make a kamikaze tackle occasionally, and that's part of the nature of the beast. But I think Maguire makes him in smarter places, and he doesn't make as many reckless challenges as Romero does.
Do we expect a significant transfer kitty this summer for Spurs?
I think there has to be. More important, they have to get rid. They create the kitty by selling players. But remember, Tottenham have a huge income stream that other clubs don't have. So this season, just gone, they'd have grossed, I think, in excess of £500 million in all forms of income, which includes gate money of 5 to 6 million every home game. They can afford to spend. They still have the lowest wages to revenue ratio of the entire Premier League. So they have the ability to spend, but they wouldn't need to get rid of Sanchez and probably one of the midfielders. I think I wouldn't be shocked if Højbjerg went, because I think Bissouma and Bentancur can be the first choice duo or two in that midfield area. I think that Tanganga goes, Perisic goes, Moore's already gone. There's a few to get rid of.
David Raya has been permanently linked basically since maybe 5-6 weeks into the season as the natural successor to Hugo Lloris. There's been a lot of smoke around this. Is it going to happen? Are they pulling the trigger on that, or does everything get suspended until Postecoglou comes in and goes, that's fine, he fits?
I think to a degree that the manager is final choice, but clearly there's been ongoing conversations. Raya wants to go to Tottenham. Brentford have already bought his successor from Freiburg. The asking price at the moment is 40. It's haggle time. That'd been an interesting conversation, wasn't it? Matthew Benham and Daniel Levy in the same room arguing over a few bob. Crikey, I think actually having money on Benham. But there we go. But I think it's likely that a deal will be done. Lloris is clearly going to go, and he's been a great servant. He's done 11 years at Tottenham. It's time to move on. So that's good. Let's not be critical. Lloris's performances over the bulk of his time at Tottenham have been of the highest standard. He's a major reason that Pochettino's team was so successful, or so close to being successful, to be more accurate. But Raya looks like the real deal, and Spurs seem to be, from everything I'm hearing, front runners for that. So I would be surprised if he isn't at Tottenham next season, which obviously is a kiss of death, and he'll end up playing for somebody else. But it looks that way.
Martin, step 2 of 3 of Manchester City's treble completed the weekend. What did you make of the cup final, generally speaking? Like, the City performance was I guess acceptable and very good in parts as well, and you look at the likes of John Stones, who was brilliant, and just a remarkable start to the match as well.
Yeah, I mean, what a hit for the first goal. 6.5 out of 10, I'd say the performance was by City standards, because they knew that's all they needed to win. I've been saying to people that they've already won the treble. They won the treble when they beat Real Madrid, because that was the only test they had left. And since then, they completed the Premier League, which they virtually won. They won the FA Cup, which I thought they were always going to win. And I can't see how they don't beat Inter Milan, because they're better from 1 to 11. In fact, they're better from 1 to 18. So they do what they have to do. I'd love them to play with their absolute A game on Saturday in Istanbul, because we could be treated to something truly special. And they weren't great, I don't think, on Saturday, but they didn't need to be. I mean, they were always better. United were given a helping hand. A couple of shaky moments at the back. I think they looked less shaky with Ederson in goal than Ortega. That's not to decry Ortega, but Emerson gives them far more certainty and assuredness, and so that will be back in on Saturday. Otherwise, I think it probably goes with the same team. I don't think he necessarily changes it. He might make the odd change in game, but I mean, I think that's his best outfield 11, isn't it? Outfield 10.
100%, and I guess from a City perspective, they'll be happy with large aspects of it, as you say. But from a Manchester United perspective, Martin, where's the gap? Like, how far off them in a league perspective do you think they could be next season? Of course, they're trying to get in Kane, they're trying to get in Mason Mount. That one looks closer, but is the gulf ever widening, or do you think Erik ten Hag is the man to narrow it?
I think it has narrowed, but I think it's a cavernous gap that you can only close incrementally rather than in one jump, unless City go backwards, which isn't likely in the short term. So all they can do is try and get closer. You know, they're third this year. They can possibly get second next year. In fact, quite reasonably aim for second next year. They can still have a great run in Europe, in the Champions League. They did win a trophy this year, which is positive. They got to a final of another competition. So I think if you're a United fan, it's quite positive. If it hadn't been for City, you'd be pretty pleased with this season. The trouble is it's City who are cleaning up, which therefore alters the dynamics of the way you look at the world. But they're the best team. Look, City have been the best team in Europe for 3 or 4 years. They just haven't proven it. Well, this season they will prove it because they're going to win the Champions League because they're the best team in Europe, and they should have certainly won in at least 1, if not 2, of the previous 3 years.
We'll leave it there, Martin. Great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
It's Martin Lipton giving us his thoughts there on the main stories from the weekend's football. The gap is cavernous, I think, but it's closing slightly.
And West Ham fans as well, I'd be interested to see. I had a couple of Irish West Ham fans on to me at the weekend there saying, I hope, lads, you give the Europa Conference League final a little bit of interest. But I think we will, because I mean, a trophy on the line for Moyes, albeit, as Martin says there, it's hard to know where he ends up next season. And the Declan Rice thing, cutting the transfer fee, I hadn't actually thought of that a manager saying things like that can have a market effect and lose £5-10 million in value. Possibly.
Well, yeah, except that everybody still wants him. It appears Bayern Munich are interested, and they've created a market for him. So you can't, I don't know. Maybe everybody gets to agree their fee, their personal terms, anyway, and maybe they just don't sell him to whoever he wants to go to. They don't let him pick, and they say you have to go to Bayern because they're spending the most money, and then the fee just gets matched. Like, I don't know. I don't think they want to keep him.
West Ham?
Yeah, I think that
cash in.
Not Rice. I don't think they want to keep Moyes.
Oh right, sorry, yeah.
And I think that rightly or wrongly, they think that they can do better. We'll see. Maybe Brendan Rodgers ends up at West Ham. Okay, a few of the ones coming through on this. I was a little sure about Ange at Spurs. It's Bobby Dwyer, but the more I look into him, the more excited I am about it. Bit of a risk because a huge step up for Ange, but hopefully bring some attacking football back to Spurs. Isel Cody says, literally Ange seems like a great guy, an excellent manager who would excel with a good side or even a mediocre one. As a Spurs fan, I'm equally delighted to have him, as I feel bad for the damage we will inevitably do to his future managerial prospects. That's the spirit, Iselt. Spurs being a bit Spursy when it comes to Ange's reputation. I think that this might be, fool me once, shame on, keep fooling me. Okay. It feels a little bit, I don't know. I do think that Ange seems to have the same type of charisma that Pochettino had, and so should be able to bring so many people with him. And look, Martin's always talking about how much money they have and how was it 2 NFL games this year and all the concerts. So look,
I hope he doesn't lose that charisma, because you can see managers sometimes move to the Premier League having been a good manager elsewhere, all of a sudden just look lost. And I really don't want that to happen to Ange Postecoglou, because that's his variation point from different managers. He's got an attitude, he's got a character, as Brendan Rodgers would say, and you just hope he holds on to that, because you can lose yourself.
Alexis McAllister rejected Manchester United in favour of a move to Liverpool, even though Liverpool are only in the Europa League. It says everything, really, says Shane, and Bernardinho is having none of it. I think McAllister has done really well, to be honest, to get a contract at Liverpool. He's carried all the way in a World Cup, and Caicedo complimented him a bit like Kante did with Drinkwater. I mean, if he turned out to be Drinkwater, that's a bad signing. But I'd say you would hope that Liverpool are able to spot how much carrying is happening. Did he actually reject Man United? Were United?
I hadn't even heard that, no.
Was that like, is that just a thing, as in he could have gone there because everybody can always go anywhere in the imaginary world of transfers that didn't happen? And then one final one from Bobby Dwyer for now. If Kane comes in, he's going nowhere near Man United. The only place he could go is Real Madrid. No guarantee of silverware at Man United either. You did just slip if we get Harry Kane and Mason Mount, then our team will be much different.
Well, United won a trophy this season without a striker, so if they bring Harry Kane in, they'll be more likely to win more trophies. And also, to say that he's unlikely to go to United, as Martin Lipton said, he wants that record, whether that's staying with Spurs or whether that's going to Manchester United. He wants the record regardless.
Yeah, I think I would agree, though. I don't think he's gone to Manchester United. I think he's gone to Real Madrid if he's gone anywhere, and I think he's going to go nowhere. I think Ange is going to be great for him, and we'll see. But certainly it's going to be interesting. It's 8:33 this morning. You're watching OTB AM. If you've just joined us, you're very welcome. You can get us live every morning on the radio as a radio show on OTB Sports Radio. Tell your smart speaker to play OTB Sports Radio, or you can get us on the OTB app and you can minimise it and go about your day. Or of course you can consume us live on video on YouTube every morning. Make sure that you subscribe and we'll get details there. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Kathleen says the London Times had reported that McAllister rejected United this time around. Didn't Man United reject him as well and had the opportunity to sign him, but he went to Brighton? Was that one of the other great moments in recent transfer dealings? No, we're not going to sign you now for a couple of million. We could sign you in a couple of years for 40 times that. Right. A reminder that Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of Off the Ball. Braeburn Coffee coming to an Applegreen store near you. New Braeburn locations are popping up every month, so make sure you visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn coffee experience. And we have a competition on Twitter. All you got to do is retweet that and make sure you're signed up to us, and we will be in touch with the winners. In the meantime, John Duggan is here. John.
Ger and Shane, how are you all doing?
Yeah.
Good morning, John.
Now that it's happened, right? Now that Ange has happened.
Yeah.
Are you getting sucked back in?
I always get sucked back in because I'm a sucker. No beef with Ange like Muhammad Ali and the Viet Cong. No beef with Ange Postecoglou. Whatever happens to Spurs. Been reading a lot about him the last few days. Like his philosophy. It's attacking football or bust. And the inspiration he got from his dad around that. And I think that he'll go down. If he's going to go down, he's going to go down with a shield. On a 4-3-3. Yeah. Attacking game.
Yeah. That's exciting.
Doesn't suffer fools. I've been enjoying some of his past press conferences and interviews.
Oh, they're amazing. So if I definitely been down that wormhole. There's a great one where was he the underage manager in Australia on a TV show in Australia?
Foster's some guy, and he's just having this ding dong with him for about 10 minutes.
Amazing TV.
Fantastic. Yeah.
My favourite headline at the top of the morning to you this morning: Aussie Ardiles. AUSSI. Aussie. Do you get it?
Yeah. You like the mid 90s all over again.
It's all right. It's all right.
No, it's brilliant.
Well,
no, Shane, it's brilliant.
But what's Ozzy Ardiles apart from the fact that he's a Spurs legend? Is that the link?
Well, because he had the Fantastic Five playing nothing but attacking football.
Right, I guess. Yeah.
When he was the manager.
We'll give it. We'll allow it.
I put on Twitter yesterday that Ange will be playing home and away.
Oh, that's I prefer that. I prefer that.
As the first Australian manager ever to manage in the Premier League, hoping to bring John Kennedy with him. And who are Celtic going to get now? And I said Celtic fans will probably have bittersweet feelings about it. They've just won a treble. Look, with all of these things, how much will Daniel Levy stay in the background? How much money will he give Postecoglou? And will he finally take his hands off the controls?
No, he's not going to take his hands off the controls. I think that, when you look at all the other clubs who are taking money from where they're taking money, I think Spurs are a really well-run club who've just been bad at picking the right manager, which is obviously one of the most fundamental decisions you've got to make, right?
But was Conte not... So Manchester United missed out on Conte when he went to Spurs. So were Spurs not doing a good thing in getting him? Hindsight 2020.
Tottenham...
would Conte have stayed anywhere for any longer is the thing?
No, I just think Tottenham's recruitment has been shambolic over the last decade. Recruitment's been terrible.
Well, Ange's one of his positives is recruitment, certainly from a Celtic perspective.
And I don't think the manager is one component of a lot of things that need to go right at a football club. Mauricio Pochettino had Paul Mitchell as a very good recruitment person, and the recruitment that was almost hollowed out there the last few years.
But also Ange's knowledge of that Asian market, if you can find, he obviously knows the Japanese market very well, but if you can find the next Heung-min Son in South Korea or whatever, his knowledge of that area of the world could be huge. And Kyogo Furuhashi, of course, could join him at Spurs.
Will they sell Kane? I think if Kane's going to go anywhere, it'll be Real Madrid, because Daniel Levy does a good relationship with Real Madrid. I don't think they're going to sell him to United,
even though he wants that Shearer record.
But I think Henry Winter's making a good argument today that he's probably young enough to come back. He's only 30 this summer, to come back when he's 33. Footballers have played at 36, 37 now. He could end up at Brentford or Brighton and score 15 goals a season. He's only 47 off, I think. So look, I wish Ange all the best. Tottenham, I just think the funding model and the kind of the data model that Spurs need to kind of, from a business point of view. And as I said, they're brilliant business people. Daniel Levy is board, great business people. But there has to be just better thinking and better execution around the football side of the business. Like Beyonce's all great having that, 5
She is great. Yeah.
But ultimately, the Champions Cup finals there next season. But ultimately, it's about the football product. There's no point in having a shiny house if there's no furniture.
Well, all the shiny house makes it easier for the football product to get good eventually. At some point, the money will stick. We haven't mentioned the League of Ireland results overnight last night. It's obviously not overnight, but yesterday evening.
Yes. So Shamrock Rovers now 4 points clear at the top, 3-0 win at Sligo. Rory Gaffney got 2 goals. St. Pat's are flying. They're up to third, 6 wins out of 7 under John Daly now. They thumped Derry by 4-1 at Richmond Park. Bohemians lost 2-1, a late goal they conceded away to Cork City at Turner's Cross. Damien Duff Shelburne edging Drogheda 3-2 at Talca Park. And Pat Hooban getting a hat-trick for Dundalk. 4-1 defeat of UCD at Oriel Park. Now 142 goals for Pat for the Lily Whites. But it just seems to me that Rovers are going to win the 4 in a row. And I would have expected Derry to be not struggling the way they have the last couple of games, but Rovers did the same a few weeks ago, so it is interesting at the top, but I still think there's a little bit of a cushion between Rovers and the chasing pack.
The 4 point gap that they have opened up, it's been slowly it's been inevitable. It felt once they turned the corner.
They won 6 in a row. They lost a couple, but they've won a couple now again. And in terms of what else, I don't know if you did in the power rankings, but Toby Alderweireld.
We didn't. No, you can explain to this everybody.
This is one of the best things I've ever seen in my life, and not just because he's a former Tottenham man and a great defender for Spurs. It's the Aguero moment for Belgian football. So on Sunday, Union Saint-Gilloise, as Cameron has thankfully informed me how to say it properly, were about to win the Belgian title. They were 1-0 up against Club Brugge in the 88th minute, but Brugge equalised and Brugge eventually went on to win. That then left the title in Genk's hands. Genk were playing Antwerp at Genk's ground, and it was 2-1 for Genk. And then in the 94th minute, Toby Alderweireld, the ball is laid off to him outside the area, 25 yards out, and he drills it into the top corner. And then the whole place goes absolutely crazy from an away perspective. Genk are just stunned. All of the Mark van Bommel, the former Holland international, runs onto the pitch, the manager, and all the players run onto the pitch, all the coaching staff. And Alderweireld is like this to the camera. And I was thinking about watching it back because it was just sensational stuff. The great work that's done by photographers and by TV director people to showing all the right shots in that moment. And the photography, and he looked like something religious. He was like the arms outstretched, and on his arm is a tattoo of Antwerp Cathedral. It's his boyhood town. He never actually played for them because he went to Ajax when he was young. So he came back for the last season for Royal Antwerp, and to score the winning goal, it's fairy tale stuff. And the Belgian city then went a bit crazy yesterday.
We've got a bit of B-roll here from. This is them celebrating. Is Royal Antwerp, is that where John O'Shea was?
Yeah, David Beckham had a link with them for years. There was a joint venture between Royal Antwerp and Manchester United, a feeder club, I suppose. So a lot of, oh my word.
Oh yeah, bit of Belgian techno.
Beers and frites all round.
You like a Belgian beer too, don't you, John?
Ah, yeah.
It's hard not to. Jeez, Edward, ever been to Antwerp?
Have you?
Have you?
Yeah.
All right.
Bought a few diamonds,
A few diamonds?
Nah, I'm only joking. It's like the home of diamonds.
I didn't know that.
And cocaine.
Okay.
Well, I think it's the biggest cocaine importing city in the world.
Really?
I think so, yeah.
Jesus.
Got a very good zoo, apparently. Although I'm not a fan of zoos, but apparently it's got a very good zoo. But yeah, the Jupiler Pro League, I think as it was called, and Royal Antwerp won it. I was interested, I don't know if you talked about this in the papers, about the FAI plan.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it yet.
So they've kind of an audacious proposal they're putting towards the government for a 15-year plan with a desire to invest in grassroots football, League of Ireland infrastructure, which would have at least 10 teams having stadiums over 20,000, and the development of an international football centre. The costing of this, 863 million, 690 million of which they would hope would come from the state, partly as a result of the football getting a share of the levy from betting, and the other 173 million would come from private investment. It does boil down to about 34.5 million a year. This is reported in the Irish Examiner and Irish Daily Mail today. Look, Roy Barrett has obviously been banging the drum. I know he's leaving about the levy and that football should get a share of that. And Robert Watt, who I think is on the FAI board as well, obviously is one of the top civil servants in the country. So if he is behind this, and if there's, I suppose, if there's an air in the corridors of Dáil Éireann that there might be a degree of receptiveness to this, especially with the Brexit situation, that players can't leave until they're 18. We will see, but it is audacious. That mismanagement in the past does cloud the proposal to a degree. Not that that's the current FAI's fault in any way. And then I suppose, like anybody in a rugby or a GAA infrastructure administrative position might be just going, what, this morning? But yeah, they put their gambit out there. Do you want to build a football industry or not? And that's what's in the plan.
Yeah, I think we should definitely have a mature discussion about having a football industry. Like, we could do it one. There's no reason for us not to have one. It is the most popular sport in the world, and we have seen that any kind of investment in it tends to pay back. Like, people want to go and watch football. They want good facilities. I think maybe 10, 20,000 seaters is too much. I think that maybe you could certainly have a staged approach to that. There could be ground sharing. I realise that the clubs don't really want to do that, but some hard decisions are going to have to be made if there's only going to be a limited amount of facilities available. But at the same time, like, if you don't ask and you don't make a plan and you don't say what the plan is and you don't tell everybody and rally support for it, then you never go anywhere. So I think, in fairness to them, they're being ambitious. They're right to be ambitious. And I think your point, John, about rugby and the GAA sitting back, letting the FAI go out and tell everybody what they're doing, they are better organisations historically at getting money from the government and understanding soft power. So we'll see what happens. But, as you say, they do have brain power in there who understand the corridors of power, and they have been accused of having some fairly significant missteps recently with the betting levy conversation. I thought they were dead right, to be honest, to be a bit more ambitious and to be a bit more ballsy when it comes to, like, we actually have something here that is a good point. And their comparison with the greyhound industry, for example, which is still being propped up by the taxpayer, and you have to wonder why, as a taxpayer, we're propping up the greyhound industry to the tune we are. And you have to wonder why the horse racing industry is. But does
the horse racing industry need the money anymore?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like, are they? Was the whole point not to get it to a level where
it is now,
they can be self-sustaining?
Yeah, and I think they are. Like, Aidan O'Brien incredibly won his 9th derby at the weekend. We're the kings of jump racing at the moment over at Cheltenham every year. I suppose the question, like, we all grew up. I mean, I did this thing on Twitter the other day. I always do these things on Twitter. Like, my clubs, the Republic of Ireland will always be my favourite entity as a sports fan. I think it's the biggest thing in the country. When the Republic of Ireland team is going well, I think it has the reach that everything else doesn't have. And how important is it as a country for us to be at these big tournaments, to be on the world stage at the Euros and at the World Cup? I think it's very important. I think it's great for our national identity, for our national pride. I think it's great for the confidence of just the people. I do believe there's the
national mood.
Yeah, the hidden confidence, the hidden mood, the feel good. And I'd love to get that back, and that can only come, I think, especially now, from it being bottom up as opposed to 40 years ago when we were able to send players over at 16 and they would get into Liverpool and Man United teams. That just can't happen anymore in a global league, which the Premier League is. And with Brexit making it more difficult, Evan Fergusons are probably more the exception than the rule. But we want 4 or 5 more Evan Fergusons in 10 years. It's just harder now, so it has to be done more in an indigenous way, or we have to have links with other countries we can send players to, like the Netherlands or Italy or France. Or but yeah, I think being at these stages where you have all the eyeballs of the world on you is very important. And rugby, as well run as it is, apart from obviously there's been issues with the women's game, it's still a global minority sport, and Gaelic Games does not have a reach outside of this island.
Epsom Derby, have you done it, John? Is that on the list? That's on the bucket list.
Everything's on the list, but I've never done it.
Yeah, Adrian ticked off one of yours last week, the Monaco Grand Prix. That's on your list.
That was
under the radar.
Yeah, that was he was down there. Conor Moore was down there as well. I was just seeing some of the Conor Moore shots and Adrian like that. The Monaco Grand Prix is it's the most charismatic race, I suppose. But the Epsom Derby, like I think I've never seen elation, as much elation in the winners' enclosure from Ballydoyle Coolmore, because Galileo died a year or two ago, and Galileo was the king of the stallions, St Sadler's Wells, and started a lot of Derby winners, but they need a replacement. And for Auguste Rodin to win, you could see the joy there and the relief, because they need obviously new stars to come into the breeding operation. And Ryan Moore, different gravy as a jockey.
Oh yeah. We might do a bit more of that later on. John, good stuff.
All right, lads.
Thanks a million. It is 8:49 this morning. OTB AM is live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Anthony Moyles is with us, going to talk about the weekend's GAA action. Here's Colin Boyle talking about Mayo's performance at the weekend first.
Louth made it very, very difficult for Mayo, there's no doubt about it, and there was a huge moment at the start of the second half where Leonard Gray had a massive goal opportunity. If that goes in, could be a very, very different game. But I think on the basis that they led all the way through, it almost seemed like the hard work done. They went 5 up in injury time with Phil McDonough, like fists of ball over the bar. Looked like that the hard work done. It was a case of seeing it out from there, but they didn't see it out at all very well. Conceded a goal chance straight away from Colin McKeever. Another point from right at the end from Conor Grimes. And luckily for Mayo, the referee blew the ball up from the next kick out, because if there was another play in that game, all the momentum was with Louth. They pushed everyone up the pitch. If they won it, there's a very good chance they might have got an equaliser, at least an equaliser, or maybe won the game.
People who were listening to Off the Ball after the game might have heard Stephen Rochford speaking to me, and I put it to him that maybe the same energy and intensity and ability to get scores that was there against Kerry wasn't there today. Now he said, well, they're different games and Louth would play it differently. They sit deep, they make it difficult. So they're happy to get the win. They know there's things they can improve on. What do you take from the game?
I think Stephen's right, two very different games. Like the Kerry game, there's so much space in behind that Kerry defence when Mayo were on the attack, and for the likes of James Carr, Ryan O'Donoghue, Aidan O'Shea, it was really a dream for them. Today it was very, very different. Louth had 14 bodies inside that 45, pretty much for every Mayo attack. I think the frustrating thing about Mayo, they go 3 up in the first 5 minutes, and it looks like they're up and running. But really, when Louth got a chance then to reset and put everyone inside, I think Mayo only scored 4 points for the rest of the first half, 3 points from play from the start and 6 forwards. So there was never a stage where Mayo could attack that Louth defence, get their best shooters on the ball, like a Ryan O'Donoghue, Aidan O'Shea, James Carr coming on the loop and just chipping away on the scoreboard. Everything always looked really, really difficult, really, really hard, and they got a couple of frees that just kept them nudging in front of Louth all the time. But there was nothing really comfortable about it. There was nothing really not easy about it. But everything was tough today for Mayo.
Yeah, Colin Boyle talking about how tough it was for Mayo against Louth. Anthony Moyles is with us. We put the All-Ireland contenders in the amber a little bit earlier on in the performance rankings, because it's tricky. Everybody's wading through a bit of treacle at the moment.
Yeah, lots of treacle. And Mayo had to wade through a fair bit of it at the weekend. It's kind of, last week everyone was I suppose buoyed by Mayo and what they've done. Certainly I was, but Louth showed a little chink, and I think it showed a chink that the likes of Derry and some of them will kind of go, oh, okay, this is what we can do. No, it wasn't the best Mayo team. No, there's definitely to be able to beat that situation that Louth presented them, you need an awful savage amount of pace at 5 and 7. That's bar none. And you can see the difference when Durkin came on. You need halfbacks who are willing to take on their men and go past their men and then ask questions inside. If you're just continuing lateral with the passes, shifting it on to the guy, well then you're inside. Your defence that you're facing will just be, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And Louth had a good few goal opportunities. They had a lovely one-on-one where a beautiful little backdoor cut, ball played in, goalkeeper made a really good save. I don't think they were ever winning the game, but they could have presented much more problems for Mayo, and Mayo could have been caught. So he's trying to manage, obviously he's trying to manage his panel, as everyone is, but they'll learn. They should learn a lot to kind of say, okay, we need to change things up here. And maybe he's holding a few cards back as well, Ger. I think there's a bit of that going on. I think there's a bit of that going on this weekend with maybe the top teams. because probably they have to.
Well, the injuries is and like that's the feeling out. Let's just briefly talk about the mad now. Everybody's complaining about the fact that we're getting to see too many games and too much football, and they're saying, "Oh, the crowds are disappointing." Like, it was the nicest day of the year on a bank holiday weekend, when a lot of people might have decided that maybe they can watch it on the telly or listen to it on the radio and go and have life, you know, because there are other things too.
Exactly.
But this is a league. We're in the league section, and then there's going to be playoffs and championship finals when everything will be decided. But in the league section, all you're really doing is making sure that all the bad teams get knocked out, and so we'll have good teams and some not great teams in the preliminary quarterfinals. But like, shut up, everybody, I think, giving out about the system until it's over. And then, because here's the thing, people are poisoned against this now. We might end up having the only good quarterfinal weekend in the last 20 years. This year, the first one, the 2010, there was a great quarterfinal weekend.
Well, we had Go Armagh last year, but you get
the whole weekend.
Yeah, the whole weekend. Yeah. You usually get 2 maybe out of 4.
It's very lucky if you get 2. Normally you get 1. And after that, if you get a second one, you're thinking, "Oh, this is amazing." A second good game. But actually, this is just the league. This is like
and I saw, you know, so there's 2 aspects to that, I suppose. There's the game, too many games. There's a couple of aspects. Too many games, the quality of the games, the attendances, and then also the structure. And Jesus, let's go again. Once more with feeling. Like, I actually don't know. Maybe there's something really obvious that I'm just not seeing, but every single team practically is going into this last weekend with something to go for.
Clare are the only ones who were knocked out, totally out.
Okay. So that's a result, if you ask me. Like, if we sat down last year and said, right, people are giving out about dead rubbers, and they're saying that really the last weekend is all about just throwing out your second or third team if you're in the ascendancy. The other team, half the lads are gone to America, and it's a waste of time. So how do we fix that? Fixed. You 15 out of 16 potentially go, and whether, you know, I do see people saying, well, you know, teams who have lost once or twice or who haven't won or 3 could still end up. Well, that's the way it is.
Yeah, but they're going to get killed in the preliminary quarterfinal. Like, that's what's going to happen.
That's what's going to happen. So is there a little small tinker that you do where say the top 2 go in or something like that? That's a possibility. I don't think I think you're right, Ger. Busiest weekend in Dublin Airport this weekend, right? Look, I mean, the fact of matches on TV, the fact of people will go to the beach with the kids, there's so much different aspects of it. And is it turgid affair?
He said Clonus was great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like, entertaining football, both teams going for it, load of scores. Like,
that was Monaghan Clare for anybody who's of course.
Well, I would argue, you know, and I kind of mentioned this weekend. There was a spell there where football was absolutely terrible. Like, you don't have to cast your mind back that far. You know, whether it was catch and kick, loads of turnovers, giving the ball away. Like, the athleticism and the skill set of the modern player is by far the best it has ever been. Right? You're seeing players play, having the ability to do things that looks kind of just normal now, that would have been abnormal 15, 20 years ago, right? It would have been the special few. And then you have fellas who are the special few, such as Clifford, who are doing things that you have never seen, and you wouldn't have seen even 15 or 20 years ago. So all of the different things, all of the levels are being raised, the athleticism, the conditioning. That's why teams are able to stick with these bigger so-called teams of the last 10 or 15 years now. So all of that work is being layered on, and you're not going to change it overnight. Like, the teams that take most of the risk reward, the teams that are more I think attuned to actually say going for the jugular, the teams that are but also are quite controlled in certain ways, they're the teams that are ultimately winning, and the teams that can transition the ball fastest from one end of the field to the next by kick or by hand, certainly by kick, because people are realising that they're the teams that are mostly winning games, right, and who have the forwards to shoot, whether you're putting them in a zone or whatever it is. So therefore the template is there. Playing conservative lateral football will not win you games. Ultra defensive, it just won't. That's proven. So how do I get to that? Now, some teams have said, well, we're not quite there yet. Like Mickey Hart said, this is an unbelievable achievement for Louth to get within whatever it is of Mayo, and I think he's correct in saying that. You know, he's saying we were still in the game in the last couple of minutes, and he said we weren't in the game against Dublin. They were blown out of it because they tried to go toe to toe. So we said, well, we want to set ourselves up for, like,
when you point in at the end,
point in it. Yeah. So different teams. You can't just go. But look, I mean, how many times ago, not that long ago, teams were playing Dublin and say, "Oh, why did they go for it? They should have just set up defensive. Should have got by 25 points." Now teams are going, "Oh, you shouldn't set up defensive. The teams should be going for it. It's not a spectacle. It's not good for us as fans." Personally, if I'm training my off 6 times a week, I want a chance.
Yeah.
It's funny, it was one of the things I noticed as well watching the Kerry highlights, and even in Clonus as well, the scoring zone in Gaelic football has just got further and further out from goal. Like Monaghan and Clare were popping scores from outside the 45, even at different points. It's like the game has changed in that degree. I also agree with you on the halfbacks. Like Derry were scoring goals, like their wing halfbacks were scoring goals. Like Conor McCarthy scored a goal and 2 from Monaghan from wing halfback. Like the team that wins the All Ireland this year are going to have, as you say, 2 quick, fast wing halfbacks.
Yeah, and I tell you one thing as well. It's vital. I watched the Meath Down game on Saturday. Very evenly matched game. Daithí McGowan kicked 2 rakers of 50s. The 50s nearly should be put out to the 60 now. These guys are they're even tapped them over. But one thing that is very evident, and again, you watch even the Loud game. Mulroy missed a few chances. Similar to Kildare as well, Ger, at certain times you need a free taker, like rugby now. The rugby stats come up, you have to be at 85%, 90% plus, because the game has become so controlled at certain times that when you're coming in and breaking those lines and the referees are giving frees, whether you're buying the frees or they're genuine frees, those frees all have to be just bang. So in other words, it's literally saying wherever nearly in that 50 metre line, whether it's far left, far right, you can't foul because this guy's just going to get it. And actually, that could be the difference when it comes to it. The best teams will have the most efficient and best free takers.
I think that's why they're putting Dean Rockstraight back in. I think
there you go,
because there was a few games there where he wasn't there and they weren't quite sure what was happening. And again, the efficiency comes down to between 55 and 75, and you're like, that's not acceptable. You can't win All Ireland with that.
Correct.
What about Kerry then? Where are they? So obviously there's a shock to the system against Mayo, and nothing like a trip to Cork. In fairness, we were slagging off the Kerry media mafia, say, is Cork going to put it up? And Cork did put it up to them.
Yeah.
So the Kerry mafia were correct to be scared heading into the game.
They were, yeah. I thought Cork were really, really hard done by. I thought they could have and should have got something out of the game. I thought the penalty, and people will argue that it does not. I think the rule is that it does not have to be a clear goal scoring opportunity. I'm kind of flummoxed still, because if that's the case,
it's one of those. If it's given against your county, you're not happy.
So John Fogarty has it in the Examiner today. In the opinion of the referee, the player fouled, or in the case of Rule 512 infraction, to deliberately collide with an opponent after he's played the ball away, or for the purpose of taking him out of the movement of play his team had, and was denied of the opportunity to score a goal when the infraction was committed. Very clear.
Yeah.
It's written so that the lawyers can get anybody off under anything later on.
Exactly.
It's designed for the...
It's because it's a very hard one. When you slow it down, and of course everything is always, you see a hit in slow motion and you're like, but then of course you see it in real time, it's different. There's no doubt about it. As Geeney comes into the tackle, he switches the ball into his left arm, and he rides he goes into the cornerback or whoever it was a Powter, and he goes down. Yes, Clifford is across. There's 2 Cork fellas coming back who in real time, you speed it up, who would have got there, who would have made it a very difficult hand pass for him, which is off his left, going across the goalkeeper, with then Clifford coming in on his left. So I thought it was harsh, but in more general terms, I thought Cork gave them plenty to think about. Lots of speed, lots of pace. Again, I think Cork, when the crunch came to it, Hurley missed 2 frees on the left-hand side of the post. Sherlock come on, missed another free. We get back to that efficiency level. I really think Kerry are stuttering. They're stuttering big time, Jared. There's Clifford is standing head and shoulders above the rest of them. Gainey looks like he has about 40 minutes in him, and then he blows up. Paddy Clifford is playing this quarterback thing, but once you get a sticky cornerback on him, you just say, listen, follow him everywhere. Just miter him. Just put him out of the game. Then I'm going, Moynihan, not really doing it for me. And I think they're 10 and 12. First of all, they're not really working hard enough, and neither are they impacting the game from a forward offensive point of view. I thought their midfield
O'Shea was pretty good.
Shawnee O'Shea was good, but again, he drifted out of the game in the last 25-30 minutes of it.
And
by the way, like after I think I saw a stat outside of the black card, like Cork gave them a good old tonkin. Like Cork were massively diminished when the black card occurred, and then the goal, and they were kind of going, Jesus, this isn't. It was just. I thought it was a very, very patchy performance by them, and I think I'd say if you're Jack O'Connor, you're worried. You're genuinely worried. You're kind of going, I do not see our identity here. I don't know what we are. Bar get the ball to David, and he hopefully will do it for us.
They're going to be playing every week now, unless Mayo. I mean, they're going to be playing every week, basically. Is that the worst thing for them in a way, that they actually there's no time to think they're going to have to sort this out? Would you rather a break?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I think they need to unearth someone from the bench. Young Murphy came on, again, shifted on a lot of ball, didn't do anything major that you would be worried about from a defensive point of view. They don't have enough guys who are standing up and saying, listen, I'll win it for you. It literally seems to be, well, we have the best forward in the country, so what am I doing shooting? Yeah. Like, what am I doing trying to impact the game? I'm just going to try to get him a ball. Now, to be honest, most of the time that works, Like, you can imagine the video reviews going, why did you take that shot? Like, David was within 20 feet of you, just get it to him. So it is a hard one, but they're going to have more of a spread when it comes to the crunch, and that's outside of Clifford and Shawnee O'Shea. They're going to have like the best Kerry teams of old. Different fellas would chip in with points. You'd have fellas getting 2 to 3 regular around the field, and you'd have different guys coming off the bench who would ask questions of you. I just don't see it. I don't see the bench. I don't see the depth. Fellas who come on and do an okay job. They're not bad footballers. They'll come on and they'll work and they'll blah blah blah. But will they impact and be able to break down a Derry defence with Derry 2 or 3 points up?
Hard to see it. I mentioned this morning the 2009 Kerry team. Jack O'Connor's been here before, like having a mediocre enough Kerry team and shoots of
they were
good squad, obviously.
They were an all-time great team, but the form was terrible. And then the lads went drinking and found their form somewhere in different pubs.
Yeah, a bit of bonding.
And then they met us. And we gave the ball away continuously. But it was funny. It is I suppose a slightly.
They played you in the semis that year, did they?
Yeah.
All right. Start Learwigs is the quarters on the August Bank Holiday weekend.
Yeah. Played us in the semi. And actually it was a game, we were well in that game, and we actually, if you're doing stats on the game, we probably had more possession than they had. It was a greasy day. It was a warm day, and then it lashed rain, and it was one of those days where and we just, at the amount of times we just kicked ball out over the end line trying to play fast football. But I don't know what was in it in the end, but it was just one of those games. But we actually, we really thought we'd take them.
4 points in at 2-8 to 1-7.
Yeah, it was it was a low scoring game.
Feast of attacking football. Back in the glory days.
Yeah, but basically just kicking the ball away. Probably both teams.
Cian Ward got the goal in stoppage time, the Meath goal. But still,
yeah. I gave a penalty away. Thanks. Thanks. I just saw that there. Thanks for highlighted. I don't know where they are. I'd say I don't know, Ger, whether it's take a break, but I think they need to. There's no bolter, there's no guy who, maybe they have someone down in Kerry, but there's no one I can see who's a mercurial type of fella who's just going to come in. Like Tony Brosnan isn't doing it, right? He's not. He's been tried, and whether his confidence has dipped, but the first couple of times, he was all going well. It was all no, Tony Brosnan could do this type of thing, and now he's gone. And I thought he was going to be the guy to kind of unlock defences. So I think they are struggling a bit, and for me, the way they performed, they're not winning All Ireland.
Well, they're going to have a tricky preliminary quarter-final, and then if they win that, they're going to have a very tricky quarter-final against Dublin, Galway or Derry, more than likely.
Wow, yeah.
Because they lost the Mayo game.
Kerry Louth in a neutral venue, somewhere in the middle of the country, in the last game, and if Louth beat them,
Kerry are gone.
Yeah, but Louth aren't going to beat them.
No,
no,
I don't think Kerry. Louth won't beat them. That's actually probably the best game for them, because Louth will set up ultra defensively, such as the weekend. Will try to catch them on the counter attack, and Kerry will be able to work on the systems of breaking down that defence. Now they'll want to get a big enough pitch. Sorry, it's not a foregone conclusion.
No,
completely, it's not, because Louth are there on merit, and Louth could very easily. Well, sorry, not very easily. It will be tough for them.
Mickey Hart dumping Kerry out of the championship in the last round?
No, I'd love to do it. Of course.
Oh, Jesus.
But
yeah, can't see it. But if that's the permutations,
well,
I think that's where it ends.
Yeah. I don't know if you can be drawn. I presume you can't be drawn against a team from your group in the quarters. That would be madness if you can. So I don't know if that's seeded or not, but otherwise they could face Mayo again in the quarterfinal. But that's it. There are good teams in all of the groups.
Yeah,
and they have not finished first in their group, which was their job, to get the week off between the preliminary and the actual quarterfinal itself. So everybody has this week off, and then next week is the final round of games. The week after that is the preliminary quarterfinals, and the week after that is the quarterfinals. Yeah. So 3 games in 3 weeks. And if you didn't win your group, you're playing in 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, even with Dublin and Kildare. I know Glenn Ryan was very annoyed post the game about Kildare's performance. I actually thought Kildare had a decent first half, and I thought they still tried in the second half. Yes, there was lapses of concentration, but Dublin learned from the Leinster game big time, and what they learned was, in that game, Kildare had learned from the previous year, which is that Dublin liked to attack down the wings, and so they blocked that out by numbers. But this time Dublin said, "Oh, okay, you blocked that out, we'll go straight down the middle." The amount of scores they got where they actually just went straight down the middle, Kildare didn't adapt quickly enough. And Kildare had no bench, they had no impact again off the sub. Like Kevin Feely came on, was pretty innocuous. Flynn came on, did what he does, which is the sublime mixed with the frustrating, and they just didn't have guys that could come on and make a big difference. But Dublin, on the other hand, it's an interesting tweak from Farrell. You mentioned Dean Rock. I didn't think Dean. I've been there before. As the twilight of your career comes, you try to do the devil and all. You're trying to be in the backs. You're trying to kick scores. And what ends up you don't do, and you're getting more and more frustrated. When you're confident in your pomp, you're just going, "Give me the ball, and I'll just do my job." And his job was put the ball over the bar. Now he's trying to do everything, and you see he's working hard, but it's just not going for him. Whereas Pascal comes in and just goes, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to try to really go at teams." And it's funny, I think Farrell is starting to go, I need to remove the conservatism from that forward line.
It's Kilkenny is the issue, right? And so he was injured and wasn't available, but people forget that he was dropped in the Derry game and comes on after 3 minutes because there's an injury that day as well. Yeah. So without him, he's obviously an incredible footballer, so is there a way of getting him in the team where he doesn't slow things up? You use him as a corner forward and his job is to finish, or is that getting in the way of Con?
Well, again, I'll go back to the very first comment we made at the start, which is about speed and that ability to break lines. So McCaffrey is one of your big losses, right? I don't know where Merchant has been. He's obviously must be injured, because again he has been that for them over the last number of years, where he brings that unbelievable pace. So if you don't have that, Ger, what's happening then is that you need it then certainly from your half forward line. So it's interesting to see Pascal. It's really interesting to see him in there, because he has that pace, and he has, like, one of the scores he got at the weekend was brilliant, where he's left and right. Kilkenny's conservatism could cost him a position, because it's like a lot of players you see playing. Do you remember David Batty, who played with Leeds?
Yeah.
The amount of time I used to sit watching him and kind of go, how's that man being paid the money he's being paid? Because he never ever kicked the ball forward. Sideways, back. Yeah, he was in there for a few crunch and tackle, but you just knew. The defence just go, don't worry, he's not going to kick it forward. We don't have to. So there's that idea of when Kilkenny gets the ball, he's not asking enough questions for you. It's interesting to see that they pulled O'Callaghan out to 11. And I think Conor O'Callaghan enjoyed that. I think he loved the freedom of that. You could see it in the performance. I think he's more dangerous there, especially if you have a team that are going to set up, say, such as a Derry, and they'll say, well, we'll go in there and we'll crowd out that full forward line on you. I think they're all. Farrell is trying to find that balance, obviously, but I think Kilkenny. I don't know how you fit him into that system. I really don't. I think it's tricky.
They'll be relatively happy with where they are at the moment, Dublin. I mean, obviously, everybody says they're still not. But they're easing off to second half victory in a game that was never really in doubt once they put the burners on in the second quarter. So will they be relatively happy?
I think they'll be relatively happy. Yeah, I think they'll be relatively happy. I think they've done what they need to do. Yeah. I still think they are probably in a situation where when the crunch really comes on, and this is the thing about Kilkenny, that you can't he is a proven winner. So what will happen is Farrell will sit there and he'll go, this guy here who's unproven, yes, he's dynamic, yes, he can do all those things, but when the crunch, when the pressure really comes on, can I rely on him or can I rely on this guy? Who I know, by the way, he's done it all before.
Yeah, but maybe he's an incredible sub to have to come on in games where you want to take the sting out of Mayo get a run on you at some point, Tyrone get a run on you at some point. You're like, where's my cavalry? You're the guy. You're just going to get on, get possession, keep it for 5 minutes, and then we'll point at the end of it, do unto them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You watched like Roscommon, like they've already beaten Mayo, they've drawn with Dublin, proper challengers.
Oh, well, we've said it the last couple of weeks, and I'm kind of fearful of blowing ahead in them because we did it at the start of the league, and then they dropped her back into third gear. They are proper challenge again, as I said, because they can play it whatever way you want to play it. If you want to go ultra defensive, that's no problem. We have the guys who we know we can put the ball into, who will get the scores. And do you know what I really like about him? He's obviously pretty ruthless, but ruthless kind of with a smile on his face. Like Donny Smith wasn't fantastic. He messed up a few times against Dublin, right, where there was opportunities to flick off a ball. I don't know if you remember one kind of late in the second half, and I think he was holding his leg after it, but there was a great opportunity of a score, and he was gone this weekend. Now he came on, but he was only, I think he was like the third or fourth sub. Like, he wasn't first man in. Now, he's a big name for them, and he will be a big name for them over the last number of years. So they're obviously kind of saying, listen, it's all about team here. There's no individuals. Like, even Enda Smith, who is a go-to man for them, like he's linking all the time, and he's getting on the end of things, but he's doing his work. Like, Jesus, I watched him in the last number of seasons, and you'd be kind of pulling your hair out because he would let fellas drift by him. Like, he's working. They're all working their socks off. I think they have a really, really good shout. Everyone's kind of waiting for them to fail. Everyone's waiting for them to do the Roscommon of old, which is they nearly get there and then they just kind of they flitter away and they're gone.
I think
I don't see it.
No, and they're going to cause somebody in the quarterfinals, if they make it, all sorts of headaches, because then they would have. They could play Mayo again. They could play Derry at that stage.
Yeah, any of those teams, they'd fancy themselves.
Yeah. All right.
And then they end up in a semi-final, and with the forward line that they have,
who knows?
Yeah.
Anthony, good stuff.
All right, cheers, lad.
Thanks a million. Now, don't miss all the action in Rugby Daily today in your OTB podcast network, bringing you everything you need to know about rugby. It's all in partnership with Deliveroo. Deliveroo has some great bundles and deals, so open the app, make your choice, and watch your rider come to you. Deliveroo, food, we get it. Here are some other highlights on the OTB podcast network for you. The football pod and hurling pod reacting to the weekend's action, and the Koi Gig pod looking back on the Champions League final. You can follow Off the Ball across social and subscribe to the OTB podcast network. Now, time for the cash machine.
Off the Ball's cash machine.
Now, May was a huge month for the cash machine. 15 lucky winners, and some of them winning life-changing amounts of cash. Mick in Wexford won 75 grand. Frank in Dublin won 50. Liz in Wexford also won an incredible 81,000 euro. The winning showing no signs of slowing down. This week, somebody could make a cool 60 grand heading into summer. It's easy to take part. We're about to give you an amount. Take note of it, enter, and if we call you You give us that number, we give you the cash. It's very straightforward. This week on the cash machine, we're giving away a very easy number to remember. It's exactly €60,000. Text OTB to 57557. If it's you, we call back after 3 o'clock on Friday the 9th of June. Answer your phone within 5 rings and tell us the prize amount, and you'll win the money. To enter, text OTB, that's to the number 57557. Just the letters OTB, nothing else. Cost is $2.50 plus your standard message rate to play. You've got to be over 18. You're playing across the Go Loud network of stations, and full terms are on our website at offtheball.com. Make sure you get your entry in by 3 o'clock on Friday the 9th of June. We could be calling you. Answer within 5 rings, tell us the prize amount, and the cash is yours. It's 60 grand. Back after this.
Off the Ball's cash machine.
Top pocket goal!
Ahead of this summer's football in Australia,
We're going to Australia.
It's what dreams are made of.
we'll be hosting a night of celebration for the Republic of Ireland women's national team in partnership with Sky, and it's coming your way on June 28th in the Mansion House in Dublin.
What a moment for the Republic of Ireland.
We'll be joined by the full squad.
I don't know what we've just done. You know, I did believe we could do it.
As well as some other great guests as we give the team a night to remember.
Emma Byrne is in tears.
I can't believe it. We've finally done it.
Tune into all of Off the Ball's channels for a chance to win tickets to this exclusive event. Sky, proud primary partners of the Republic of Ireland women's national team.
Out believe together, and we can go anywhere.
They are going to the World Cup Finals.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Right, to something slightly different. I'm delighted to say we have two legendary referees with us, Dr. Errol Sweeney and Keith Hackett, join us now. Gentlemen, you're both very welcome to the show. Refereeing is generally in crisis across all sports, it turns out. But Errol, I might start with you. Do you remember a time when the atmosphere around refereeing was so difficult?
I think it's always been difficult. It's never an easy job, if you call it a job. You've got two competing teams, and no matter what decision you make, one team is not going to be happy. So it's always been difficult. And it's always been difficult, just adding on a little bit, to recruit and not even recruit, but to retain referees that are already there.
It feels like it's getting worse, though.
Yeah, it does, with the amount of assaults on referees. I mean, even here in the Republic of Ireland, we had a young man, same namesake as myself, called Daniel Sweeney from Athlone, who was severely assaulted in the car park after a match by 4 individuals. And I'm trying to be nice now, not to be too rude, but these guys attacked him after the game and severely assaulted him, broke his nose, broke his eye sockets, and knocked out some of his teeth and so on. Just appalling. And it's going on. In fact, I had a picture that I put up on my own show on a Monday night called the Monday Review Show, and where a young lady in Pakistan was assaulted, and I have the photograph with the blood coming down out of the back of her ear there. It's appalling, and something really, really seriously needs to be done, and not next week or next year, but now.
Keith, what do you think could be done to help the situation that we find ourselves in?
Well, I think the English FA have taken a step in the last couple of weeks that I think is dynamic, but it only applies at the lower end of grassroots level football, and that is to start to deduct points for serious misconduct. And I think that what we've got to do is, at the senior game, the elite level game, where there's so much cheating, there's tactical influences on the game that are negative towards the spectator. If we look at the amount of actual playing time, we're looking at 52, 53 minutes of actual playing time in a Premier League game at this moment in time. And a lot of that is down to just sheer cheating that's going on, which is making life very difficult for the referee. The referee's got a sanction of a yellow and a red card. And we saw recently with Anthony Taylor issuing 13 yellow cards in a Europa Cup final, with the impact of a yellow card having almost no reaction whatsoever. Whereas in my day, when we first introduced yellow cards, it impacted immediately, and we had players just backing off a bit and reacting to it. But the modern game, as Dr. Errol has quite rightly pointed out, is getting worse at the top level, and it's cascading down and making life very difficult for referees at grassroots level. And we in England are actually seeing games taking place on the odd weekend without referees being available.
You've brought that incident up there, Keith, the Anthony Taylor incident, and I guess from a viewing perspective, it was tough to watch the substitutions and the coaches, gesticulating for every single little decision. Then you see the video of Mourinho afterwards, castigating Anthony Taylor as he heads for his transport home. And then you see the horrific scenes in the airport as well, as himself and his family are, completely abused and have chairs thrown in their direction and all sorts and spat at. What was your reaction to that?
I was just appalled. I think anybody in sport recognises that when referees make decisions, there's half the team going to be unhappy with what you've actually decided to do. And I think that it's part of the game, but I think this was an extension of something that we've not seen at the elite level. We Dr. Errol has pointed out the physical assaults that have taken place and continue to take place at grassroots level with our junior referees. At the elite level, this was completely and utterly out of the ordinary. Now, I think there's questions that UEFA have got to ask about security, their own personal security of the match referee. Of course, we had Mourinho having a go at the referee in the actual area of the departure of the transport to the airport or to back to the hotels. That should not have happened, and there needed to be security around that. Now, as a referee, and I've been there in Europe, you referee the match, and then the following day you're going back to the airport, usually with the FA of that particular country guiding you through the airport, but little security. I think now, in the modern game, we've just got to step up the security.
Jose Mourinho has to take responsibility too, though, right? Like he legitimised or gave cover to the fans who subsequently acted by his actions.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? We saw a couple of years ago Trump and all the sort of machinations of his reaction on the media and what happened afterwards with the assault in a public office. Now, I think that what we've got here is something similar. There's no doubt in my mind that Mourinho was a catalyst for the problems, and as a consequence, I'm calling UEFA to make a real sanction here. Now, the sanction, first of all, is the two teams and the one that was the real offender. I think they should be thrown out of the competition for a couple of years. They should not be allowed to compete for any UEFA competition. Now, in terms of Mourinho, what do you do with him? Well, he's a football manager. He manages a team. He has to affect the changes of that team. So a ban. And that ban, I think, has to be really meaningful. So for me, I think I'm looking at a 10-match ban. Now, that is extraordinary, out of the ordinary, but I think the incidents involving Taylor, who, thanks to someone who caught a chair, it avoided hitting him, and that could have been a serious injury. So for me, I think it's got to be fairly draconian. I start off at that point. No doubt UEFA will back off a bit, but let's get a punishment that is meaningful.
Errol, so obviously the punishment must fit the crime for any of these incidents. In terms of trying to change the culture, where do you start? How do you begin to alter the situation? Because it's not just football that this is an issue in. Literally every sport. We do a sports show, we cover everything, and after every high profile match in almost any sport, we could sit and pick through every single incident and go, well, the referee was largely was right but was wrong on these few key things which swung the game. So from a cultural perspective, what can football do particularly?
Well, I don't know if it is going to change, and my reason for saying that is there's so much money involved now. I mean, players and managers, their salaries are telephone numbers, and so long as that amount of money is there, I think this will not only continue but might even get worse, because the need to win seems to be at all costs, and if cheating and diving and lying is necessary, then so be it. I would 100% agree with Keith, and I'd even go a little bit further in saying that the sanction should not necessarily be monetary, because that's nothing to them. It's small change, even if it is small change. I think it really needs to hit them, not necessarily in their pocket, but in their position in the league, and immediately deduct them points. And as I discussed with Keith on my show last night, teams can get deducted 10 points, 15 points, even relegated, as Rangers were a couple of years ago, because of misdeeds or whatever they did. The same has to happen in instances like this. Fining them, money is absolutely nothing when you get some of the big team owners who are multi-billionaires, let alone millionaires. So the money is not the issue. I think it has to be banned. It has to be points, definitely on points. And as for the yellow cards that Anthony Taylor issued the other night, he had no choice but to issue yellow cards. But I think there was a very cynical move going on here, in that some of the players are saying, well, I've already been booked, you do the next one and then you get a yellow card. Maybe I'm being too cynical, but it seemed like that's the way it was going. And perhaps maybe bringing in something like, after a third yellow card, the next card for that team should be red, regardless of the seriousness of the incident. But something really seriously needs to be done to stop this. Otherwise, it's going to go on, because there's a winning mentality there, win at all costs. And if that means cheating and diving, or as the famous woman Jose Mourinho used to be, park the bus, win at all costs, that seems to be the attitude nowadays. Law 5 of the laws of the game clearly states that the referee's decision is final. It also says in there that players and officials must, not will or might, must respect the decisions of the referee. And the third thing I would absolutely stop, is this handshake with the players and the officials at the start of the game. If I was in charge of the referees, I would say, please, with respect, do not shake hands with my referees. I'm going to step them back, and if you want to shake hands with each other, that's fine. And what happens? The game hasn't started 2 minutes and they're kicking lumps out of each other, they're cheating, they're diving. So much for the respect, so much for the handshake. I would say to my referees, stay away. You don't get a judge up on the bench coming down and talking to the defence, or talking to the lawyers, or commiserating with a guy who's just been sentenced. He's there on his own, separate. Referees should be the same. I also criticise the referees for going over to players. Player goes down injured and they're almost treating him like he's their son. Are you all right, son? Is everything okay? Shouldn't do that. You have to be seen to be totally independent and separate at all times.
Errol, I guess that the issue as well, referees are more visible now. So many games are on television that everyone recognises them on the street when they see them. You would have refereed in South Africa for quite a significant number of years. Would you have had any examples of intimidation or abuse directed towards yourself after matches?
How much time have you got? I mean, I've been taken out of in the boot of a car in certain places. I was taken out in an armoured personnel carrier one time in Johannesburg. I arrived at a hotel down in Bloemfontein to do a very important relegation match. When I got to my room, I had a bullet was left on my bedside table. I got the message, but we had fantastic security before, during, and after the game. I could tell you stories all day long to make your hair stand as far as South Africa, because they really are fanatical. But on the issue of Anthony Taylor, I'm going to elaborate a little bit on what Keith said. Referees, after important games of any description, be they finals or first round matches, should not have to walk through the normal departure gates where they can easily be seen, identified and accosted like Anthony Taylor was. Surely they can bring them out the diplomatic way, where diplomats, they don't walk through the normal departure gates.
We shouldn't have to do that though, right? Because this is just
absolutely
this is just football. You wouldn't have to do it if Mourinho hadn't ratcheted up the ante. And I do agree with you in certain circumstances. Tensions will run high, and you need to plan for the worst. I absolutely understand that, but really, we shouldn't need to be treating referees like unexploded bombs.
No, and absolutely, you should not. But that's going to be the case from now on. And again, it's all related to money. because of the amount of money and the need to win and the desire to win, that's going to. Sadly, I think it's going to continue. But what happened to Anthony Taylor was absolutely appalling. And it's not only him, but it could be anybody, like other referees I've mentioned earlier on, who get assaulted, and we never hear a thing about it. Yeah. It's happening at the lower levels.
Keith, the final point on this, in terms of like how hopeful or otherwise you feel about the direction we're heading in, it doesn't feel like we're going the right direction. Maybe Howard Webb coming out and doing some publicity around VAR is going to help tone down the VAR obsession that's going on at the moment. But what's your instinct about the direction that we're travelling right now?
Well, I think my view is that we've seen in the last couple of seasons what has been deemed a lighter touch. That is, referees trying to reduce their amount of involvement in the game to allow the game to flow. As a result of that, what has happened is players have taken advantage, in my opinion, and we've seen misconduct in all aspects that are negative to the overall image of the game. Howard will no doubt have learned over recent years how to make the changes through good communication with the public and the media. He's a very good media savvy guy. Now, I think what he's got to do is he's got to get VAR operating in a much more efficient manner. My view is that the way that could be done is to have a single panel of VAR specialists. Those guys, that's all they do, week in, week out. I think that will help the relationship between referee and VAR that is somewhat wayward at the moment. I think he's got to work with the clubs and the managers to say, here are specific areas of the game that we are going to clamp down. We're going to tighten up. I think acts of simulation and in that case, open cheating that make it very difficult for the referee. I think in that situation, he should be talking to the FA and the Premier League and say, look, what I'd like you to do is support our referees by post-match sanctions if appropriate. And that means review some of the actions of players on the field of play and subject them to some form of fine or suspension when they have actually been proven to be simulating, if you like, cheating the game. Now, VAR is an area, but I think also we need the laws of the game changing in relation to handball. At the moment, they've tried to tighten up and show too much of the detail of handball, whereas I think we need to go back to, I read the 1938 laws of the game. Not that I'm a nerd, but I read them recently. All it says is that handball has to be deliberate. And I think that's all we need. Let the referee judge whether the handling offence has been deliberate. This whole nonsense of a player making his body shape bigger fails to take into account that the action of the body mechanics, when someone is either running or jumping for the ball. And therefore we get incidents that we saw in the cup final of Grealish being punished with a penalty kick when he believes that his action was natural. I thought at the time it was a harsh decision because I didn't see the body shape being made bigger. And therefore, in that sense, we had VAR coming in. And a decision that probably the referee on the day during the course of the game took little notice of was suddenly drawn into controversy because of the involvement and over-exuberance of VAR. Look, I'm here in a room in Stockley Park. I want to get involved. And what we've got to do is Howard's got to say to them, stay out of it until we believe it's a clear and obvious error.
All right. Fascinating stuff, gentlemen. Thank you both for joining us this morning. You've been great with your time. Cheers.
Pleasure.
It's Errol Sweeney and Keith Hackett there giving us some thoughts on the crisis in refereeing. And we are talking football, but it's clear that the same crisis exists in all sports at the moment. A reminder, we're live each morning with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Edition is available now. On tomorrow's show, we'll have Vinnie Perth with us. Look back at last night's fixtures and ahead to next weekend's fixtures. I look ahead to the Europa Conference League final and plenty more. Some of the comments that we didn't get to earlier on. Madrid would never sign Kane. He doesn't have the commercial appeal or profile to be a marquee Real Madrid signing, says Quirky 1980.
No. That's ridiculous.
England's quite a big country and it's a big market.
Thomas Gravison wasn't exactly a marquee, was he? Still played for the Galacticos.
Yeah, and also like Gareth Bale was, also came from Spurs, and Steve McManaman.
He's as high profile as you'll get. Was he not on the Jimmy Fallon show, Harry Kane, when he was over?
Was he? Yeah?
He was on one of those shows. Yeah.
He says he wants to kick in the NFL when he's finished.
Right. Best of luck to him.
Between Spurs paying out sack managers and signing players and ruining them, Perisic, Basuma, etc., they're a shambles, and I don't know how Levy gets away with it, says Porrick Dillon. Kane is more motivated by beating goal-scoring records, prefers to be like Shearer, a big fish in a small pond. Yes, London, a famously small pond, Conor Joyce, tiny little pond, not at all important in the global scheme of things. If you're ever having a bad day, just realise there's a Spurs fan out there, says Boyce88. So thanks very much for that. And then loads of people suggesting that maybe Mickey Hart will be able to pull off something magical against Kerry.
Don't rule it out. That's all I'm saying.
Watched the Mayo game with a few Kiwi mates here down in Melbourne. They weren't too impressed. Torturous game, says Lorky, which is fair enough. And that is it. Right, we're done for today. We're going to play you out with some Sunday paper goodness. This is Kathleen McNamee in conversation with Roy Curtis and Orla McElroy. Enjoy. Have a great one.
Hello and welcome back to Off the Ball. I'm Kathleen McNamee and I'm here to take you through the day's sport, and I am now very lucky to be joined for the Sunday paper review by Irish Independent columnist Roy Curtis and Irish Daily Mail sports editor Orla McElroy. Guys, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi Kathleen.
I think we were getting half the conversations we're hopefully going to have on air over the next little while during the ad break and the news there. Lots of stories across the papers today. Unsurprisingly, leading most of the front pages is that win for Manchester City against Manchester United. The Sunday Times have gone with seeing double. Manchester City one match from treble as Gundogan scores twice to seal FA Cup win. The Observer has 2 down, 1 to go. Actually, Sunday Independent is kind of one of the few things that does have Manchester City on the front page, but the big picture on it is Clifford's rebel yell. Champions get back to winning ways, and an image of David Clifford celebrating after scoring a controversial penalty yesterday in their win against Cork. We were hearing from both managers there a little bit earlier on. The Sunday Mirror Sport, Gunstoppable after Ilkay Gundogan's 2 goals there. The Sun Sport, Gun 2-3. Pep, only the treble can make us complete, and a picture of an emotional Pep Guardiola. I was saying earlier to the lads, I was kind of surprised at how emotional Guardiola was after yesterday. I thought he would be kind of saving up those emotions for next week in the Champions League when they actually get the treble, if they do manage to beat Inter Milan.
I think maybe the pressure cooker's building up and he needed to let some stuff out ahead of next week. He'll be an interesting case study, I'd say, over the next 5 or 6 days.
Oh yeah, definitely. There is a tomb to be written about him someday, and I hope someone gets it and they're able to properly interview him and the people around him about these years, because it'd be amazing to know what's been going on in his brain. Here we have the Irish Mail on Sunday. 1 more to go, Haaland. So that was Haaland saying yesterday that they still had 1 more to go. He was cheering that into the crowd after the win. And the Sunday World Sport, Top Gun, there may be treble ahead as Gundogan's brace fires City to FA Cup glory against old rivals. I think that one's my favourite out of all of them.
It's very good.
We might as well start with just a little bit of chat around that, since it is dominating all the back pages. There is a bit of a assumption at this stage that the treble is going to happen, but as John Duggan was pointing out earlier, there is still a match to be played, and with City's record in the Champions League, it's hard to know, will they actually be able to deal with the mental pressure, like you were saying with Pep Guardiola letting go a bit of those emotions. What would it mean for the City team to, I suppose, get that final notch that they need?
I think it's a defining week for Guardiola. Obviously, it's been well documented that he hasn't won a Champions League without Messi, despite having extraordinary resources at both Munich and Manchester. And he has, until this week, or this last couple of weeks, always stepped away from the significance of the Champions League and pointed out that they'd won so many league titles, so many FA Cups, that their legacy was secure, regardless of what happened in Europe. But he changed his tone yesterday in the aftermath of the game. It was really, really interesting where he said, we have to win this. These guys will never get the credit they deserve as a team unless we win this. And it's almost like he was tortured in the past. He made tactical changes that seemed illogical, a genius overthinking almost. That he looks like he's taking a more straightforward approach to this and saying, I'm going to put the best team I have out there. I'm not going to come up with any wild tactics. And if we perform, we'll win, and we need to win. He's saying the players should feel pressure. It's logical to feel pressure because this is the defining moment. And if you look at the way they've played recently, particularly the way they dismantled Real Madrid, it's really difficult to see them not winning next week.
Yeah, it is. And especially, like, as you say, that every other time Guardiola has gotten to this stage, you're looking at the team he's putting out or the formations he's doing, and you're like, did he disappear for a while and someone else took over? Because it just doesn't seem to make any sense. And I think with the momentum that they've had in the final couple of games in the season, and also that FA Cup yesterday, I do think there was a part of Guardiola somewhere who saw the fact that yes, Manchester United are nowhere near the class of City, but the whole idea of that Erik ten Hag was going to be able to say to them, well, look, you don't want City matching your record, you don't want them taking that, and then also we're one of the final things that can stop Guardiola getting this big treble that is the defining moment of his career. I can kind of understand how maybe in Guardiola's head that, yesterday was more of a stumbling block to achieving his hopes and dreams than maybe next weekend might be.
Yesterday is just become a means to an end. It's almost not about the trophy. Nobody kind of worried about the trophy. United wanted to win it because they wanted to stop the treble, and City wanted to win it because it's just number 2 and now we can move on to number 3. And I love, they've absolutely dropped all pretense of, we're not worried about this and, it's just about the process or anything like that. It's literally, if we don't do it, we're missing something forever. That's what it's all about. We've done incredible seasons, but we have to win the Champions League to be recognised like the team deserves to be recognised. As Roy said, he knows that's what it's all about. And the pressure is going to be incredible. You can't imagine how bad it's going to be this week.
Isn't it extraordinary in a time of PR spin where every potential bomb is diffused in advance, anything that might stir controversy, that Guardiola is walking head on into this and saying, this storm is coming and we've got to be able to deal with it. And I really think he's learned from his own behaviour in the past that trying to distract from it, trying to play it down clearly hasn't worked. To say to these players, high achievers, huge competitors, this is your moment, go and seize it.
And what's the point in him pretending? What's the point in him putting a bit of thought into how am I going to,
you can't
play
deny
this
it at
down?
this stage because everyone knows.
Of course not. And it would look ridiculous if he did attempt to try it. So at least he's kind of going, yeah, we know this is all that matters and we're going to give it everything.
Yeah, and he's talked about it for so long as being defining for him. So if he was to turn around now and be like, oh no, we don't care, we're taking things easy, it's all going to be fine, you'd be like, I wonder what you do in a week like this. You've just won the FA Cup, so obviously you have that little bit of a high and then you have the anticipation going in. I'd love to get into all the sports psychologists' heads that are working with these City players this week, and how do you approach maybe a Haaland compared to a Jack Grealish and adjusting what those players need. One of the players that is mentioned, of course, across all the pages is Gundogan after those 2 incredible strikes yesterday from him. 12 seconds in for the first goal, which is the fastest ever goal. I hadn't even sat down by the time this goal was scored. And between that and the Women's Champions League as well, which also had a goal in the opening couple of minutes, I was like, I'm in for a goal fest. I don't know which one I'm supposed to be paying more attention to. But yeah, Gundogan, he's an interesting one because he's been so pivotal to City this season, but there's still that question mark over his future. And, Pep said yesterday that, they're trying their best to hold on to him. Rumours are that he's going to go to Barcelona if he can't sort things out with City, but he was the hero yesterday.
He's a very atypical superstar. Barney Ronay, the Guardian Observer writer who has a magnificent turn of phrase, spoke about Gundogan's contribution generally. I actually just took down a couple of notes. He said they completed the double here with a couple of moments of routine mid-30s brilliance from a footballer who looks less like a visitor from the footballing future, more like a cuddly pirate. Footballers don't generally look like this. Footballers are snake-hipped super athletes, all tensile strength and elite power-to-weight ratios. Gundogan is small and slightly rotund. He doesn't have a football haircut or a footballer's look of fierce, hungry focus. He seems to be thinking about things, scurries about the place like the old family Labrador who knows how to open the back door and bring you your favourite jumper when you feel bad. I think it's an absolutely magnificent description. But he is clearly a cerebral player rather than athletic player. And Guardiola spoke yesterday about they've lived as neighbours. He was Guardiola's first signing, and they've lived as neighbours for 7 years. And it was remarkable to hear Guardiola describe him as a very good friend. You don't normally hear that in a relationship between manager
especially
and
at this
player.
stage. You know, sometimes
Exactly.
it comes out afterwards. But at this stage,
and I think they've all talked about him as a future coach, the latest following in the Arteta line to work with Guardiola and then move to the sideline. And I think there's still a possibility he might stay if he's given an extension on his contract, but it's sort of policy to maybe only offer a year. And if he won the Champions League, stepping away to Barcelona might be the next move. But he's never been one of the guys that you first focus on. But then when you look back at the body of City's work, he's always a key figure. And if you look at guys that didn't even get on the pitch yesterday, like Riyad Mahrez, an absolutely magnificent player. And I know they're not like for like players, but Gundogan is always in the side for the big games. And I think that, as much as anything, speaks of his absolute central importance to everything they've achieved.
I'd actually forgotten that he was Guardiola's first signing when he arrived, that he'd actually been there for the entire Guardiola project until I was reading about it in the papers today. And as you say, like, he's just a name that's always there, even if it is the sort of game where maybe City can afford to relax some of their players. He still seems pretty central to the way they set up and the way that they play.
And somebody who's probably, like, he's that type of player who's appreciated more looking back, really, isn't he, than
very much
than you do at the time. So
yeah, but that's the thing, you kind of think that there would be a massive cohort of City fans that, should he leave this summer, and as he said, it does look pretty likely that that's going to happen, will have wanted to have given him maybe a proper send-off. And the only way they can really do that now is if they win the Champions League, because obviously then they'll have their open top buses, and I don't know, Pep will be out cheering and throwing things into the crowd, as we've seen him done in other times, whereas they're not going to do that this week with the FA Cup because they have such a big thing to come. In terms of like a player like that, obviously we've seen City and they're so good at recruitment, and obviously they have the money to be so good at recruitment, but the fact that you can't come to some sort of agreement with a player who has given so much to the club and who has been such a regular, you're not talking about someone that Guardiola is putting out to pasture by any means. Is it not worth fighting a bit harder than City seem to have been for the player?
You would think it is entirely. He's shown himself to be so pivotal. He scored 2 as well in the league deciding game. He's a central figure. He's Guardiola's primary lieutenant on the pitch, almost Guardiola's brains on the pitch. De Bruyne is a beautiful, creative, powerful footballer, and Haaland obviously is this Norse divinity, but Gundogan is the guy, the glue almost, who keeps everything together. Money is obviously no object. City have bought the Premier League, bought their dominance. No one can hide from that fact. I still find them hugely attractive to watch, understanding the sports washing and despising what it stands for. The actual aesthetic on the pitch, you can't but enjoy it if you like football. You can despair at what it represents. And Gundogan, I think, is a really central player in that. Some players, ones who don't often make headlines, their greatness is only appreciated after they go. And I think he'd be a really difficult player, even with their wealth, for them to replace. Players like that, like Casemiro when he came to Manchester United, their football intelligence, their understanding of what's required to make a team tick and make those around them better, is a very understated asset in a time when we really sort of herald the spectacular. He is the glue.
Yeah, and there's also the fact that, like, as much as you can buy players and buy the best young talent, someone with the experience of Gundogan in a team like City, who's been there for 7 years, who's seen everyone come through the doors, who's like adjusted his play to players like Haaland coming in and what he requires, or if it's like a Jack Grealish or whoever it is, you also do need that stability in a team, as well as the constant turn off of the biggest and the brightest, which kind of leads quite well into the other thing that's in most of the papers today, as well as talking about City and if they're going to do the treble, is Manchester United and where they are after yesterday. And I suppose, a couple of people writing in the papers that United don't really have to be ashamed of their performance yesterday. You know, they probably did all they could, but when you saw the likes of, you know, Weghorst coming on and like Jadon Sancho going off, who was completely invisible for most of the match once again, it's hard to see him sticking around Manchester United for much longer. And then the options that City had to come off the bench, they're just nowhere near the same place.
Yeah, and you can talk about, I mean, Roy alluded to it with the discussion of, you know, City's, the charges and where they are financially and how, you know, how they've got to this place. And actually that's an interesting point about the papers, is there's not much discussion. In comparison to the Premier League win, there was a lot more mention then of the charges that City were facing in comparison to what's there now. Today it's all...
It was barely mentioned in most of the pieces that I read.
I haven't seen much mention of it at all, and it's you know, it is, as you said, acclaiming the performance. But you look at, like, there's player ratings here in front of me, you see, like, United are littered with 4s and 5s and City are up with 7s and 8s, and yeah.
Do you think that's a failure of our journalism, that, you know, every single paper today has pretty extensive coverage of it, but it's not even a footnote, really?
Yeah, I think there has obviously been a lot of coverage of. I think probably in the immediacy of that fixture, it may not have featured as much. I suspect it will become a very dominant team in the days ahead, both in the build-up to the Champions League and particularly if they win and emulate United's treble. The fact that a sports washing project is in danger of reducing the Premier League to just the plaything of a super wealthy club. When you mentioned there the talk of what this means for Manchester United, I think it must be infinitely depressing for them to know that they probably have the right manager at last. They have made some really good, significant signings. They have Rashford playing like a world star, and they are not in the same postcode as City. And they're not going to be. I know some people will react to that and say, well, it takes time. Guardiola's been there 7 years. It took Klopp a number of years before his project came to fruition. I think United will continue to improve. I think Ten Hag has shown himself a manager of substance. But City's infinite resources just raised the bar to a point that the miracle was that Liverpool were able to go with them for so long. And you wonder now, I suppose the one hope for United, for Liverpool, for Arsenal, for anybody else hoping to compete, is that Guardiola will move on. Maybe in a year, maybe in 2 years. I think his contract's 2 more years. But for so long as he stays there, and for so long as they have state backing, they're going to be invincible.
That's a point. Henry Winter makes that point. United need 3 transfer windows to catch up, you know, to even catch up to where City are now. And then he also makes the point further on, like, that while Ten Hag looks definitely like the right guy, you know, there's an element of uncertainty there with the ownership of the club. So if you don't know who owns the club, how much money you have available, how do you set up an investment strategy and, you know, a strategy whereby I'm sure, like, all these clubs plan 3 and 4 transfer windows in advance. They're not just planning for the next one. So how do you set that strategy in place if you don't know who's going to own the club or what kind of funds you're going to have available?
Exactly. It's impossible.
So does that set them further back on the road to trying to catch up with City?
Absolutely. I don't want to paint it as a bleak picture. As I say, I really adore watching City play. But at the same time, the notion of competition is inherent to competition, and that's why we were sort of thankful to Klopp and Liverpool for so many years for maybe disguising the reality of how great City's resources were by serial overachievement on Liverpool's behalf. We saw it at the start of this season with Arsenal, and most neutrals attached themselves to Arsenal just because they represented hope, I think. And if you look at what PSG have done in France, they're just going to win the league. If you look at how Scottish football has been diminished, okay, Rangers had a period of dominance and it's Old Firm, but you know at the start of the season that it's not a true competition. And the Premier League's one strength, the one calling card has always been this team can win, this team could. They overplay and maybe the most competitive league in the world, but there was truth to the fact that lower teams regularly beat higher teams, and the title was questionable at the very least. But City's dominance just doesn't look. It's a voice grip that's going to be very hard for any other team to loosen, I think.
Yeah, I remember during COVID, and it was like a Zoom Christmas party, which, you know, those fun things that we used to have to do, and to make it more entertaining for ourselves, we did a bit of a quiz, and I was working over at ESPN at the time, and one of the ones was like, could you name every single winner of the league since it started up? And it was funny because the years that City won it were the years that everyone really struggled to remember that it was City, because they could remember what happened in the top four, they can remember who was relegated, if there was like a team that did particularly well and kind of finished a bit higher up the table than we could, all that, who won it. And we were, every time we got to that point, we were like, it has to be City. And it was always City, because as beautiful as the football is, and as amazing as it is to watch someone like Haaland banging goal after goal, it's becoming unremarkable, which sounds stupid to say, but it kind of is.
That is what happens in any walk of life. I'm well known as a Dublin football fan, and I remember the euphoric feeling in 2011, just this, one of the great days of your life, when they won after 16 years, and they went on to win 8 All-Irelands and win 6 in a row. And with the best will in the world, you can't, even as a fan of those teams, get the same level of joy. So obviously for a neutral, seeing a team win again and again, whether it's City or whether it's Dublin, your natural calling is to say, is there anyone who can come in and take them on?
Well, at the moment, it doesn't seem like there's too many. Arsenal made a good try of it this year, but I also
seems
don't
to
think
take so much out of teams. That's the thing. It's like, it's a monumental effort for, like, what Liverpool did for as long as they did. Yeah. It was a monumental effort to get there, and then that seems to really tell in a team. Like, look at, you know, what Leicester did to win, and then where they come back to. You know, how is it going to affect Arsenal to have done as much as they did for as long as they did? So, you know, can anybody keep that up in a sustained manner? Not unless you're Man City.
To take on City, you've got to be running at 100-metre pace over 5,000 metres, and you just think that's not sustainable.
Yeah, I know. There's one of the things I thought maybe might change the things this year in terms of City was to having the World Cup in the middle of the season, and obviously having so many high-class players, you're going to have a higher amount of them actually competing at the World Cup, and we saw it affect a lot of other teams. Like towards the end of the season, players just look like they're absolutely out on their feet. City, they just seem to keep on. They almost got better in the second half and were able to push on, and maybe that is the benefit of having, you know, any of their bench is probably pretty close to a starting 11 player in every other team, or at least definitely the top half.
Probably didn't do any harm that Haaland wasn't at the World Cup.
No, probably didn't do any harm. I mean, we could have done with seeing him score a few goals. That would have been interesting, and a few less in the Premier League if you're not a City supporter. So, and it's hard to know Erik ten Hag, like, where does he go? What does he do now? He clearly needs some sort of money coming into the club so that he can buy the sort of players that they need. Like Rashford's obviously playing really well. You looked at Eriksson, was a really important player and really steadied things at United when they needed that, but he was just absolutely wrecked by the end of the season, which is understandable considering everything he's gone through.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
Have you